Seriously, a little broken compass. Derek yanked her wrist up for the whole garage to see. You think that makes you special, sweetheart? The laughter hit her from every direction. 40 men, the most dangerous brotherhood in Red Canyon, and every single one of them was laughing at her tattoo. Megan Callahan did not flinch. She did not look down. She just stared at Derek Hayes with those calm blue eyes, and in that silence, something shifted. Because the one man in the room who actually mattered had just stopped laughing. If this story already has you hooked, hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from, because I want to see exactly how far this story travels. And don't you dare leave before the end, because the truth about that tattoo is going to change everything you think you know about this woman. Let's go. The day Megan Callahan walked into the Red Canyon Hells Angels garage, she was carrying three things. A worn canvas backpack with a broken zipper she kept meaning to fix. A steel toolbox that was older than most of the men working in that building. And a silence around her that was so complete, so deliberate, that it made people uncomfortable without them being able to explain exactly why. She was 29 years old. She stood 5'6". She had golden blonde hair pulled back into a low braid, calm blue eyes that didn't dart around the room the way nervous people's eyes did, and a small tattoo on the inside of her left wrist, a compass, its needle broken clean off, pointing nowhere. She had filled out the employment application online. Mechanic assistant, entry level, full-time. She didn't put much in the work history section. She never did. She listed enough to be credible and not enough to be traceable. The man who interviewed her was a wiry, sun-beaten guy named Carl, who managed the garage operations and had absolutely no patience for people who wasted his time. He asked her 3 technical questions about engine diagnostics in the first 60 seconds. She answered all 3 correctly without hesitating. He offered her the job before she finished the 3rd answer. You start Monday, he said. I'll start today, she said. Carl looked at her for a long moment. Then he pointed toward the back of the garage and said, Bay 4, there's a 98 Softail that's been making a noise nobody can figure out. See what you find. She picked up her toolbox and walked to Bay 4 without saying another word. That was a Thursday afternoon in late October. By Friday morning, she had fixed the Softail. She had also quietly identified a coolant line issue on a touring bike in Bay 7 that nobody had noticed. And she had reorganized the tool wall in Bay 4 so that every instrument was within reach, based on the sequence in which a mechanic would actually use them during a standard rebuild. Nobody asked her to do any of that. She just did it. And that quiet competence, that absolute absence of needing to announce herself, was exactly the thing that made Derek Hayes decide he didn't like her. Derek Hayes was 51 years old and had been a Hells Angels member for 22 years. He wasn't the chapter president. He wasn't the sergeant at arms. He held no official title at all, which meant his authority existed entirely in the social ecosystem of the garage, in who laughed at his jokes, who deferred to his opinion, who let him talk first in a room. He was loud. He was large. He had the kind of confidence that came not from capability, but from never being seriously challenged. He noticed Megan on her second day, not because she did anything to attract attention, but because she somehow moved through the garage without creating any social friction. And social friction was the medium Derek Hayes operated in. He couldn't read her. He couldn't place her. She didn't flirt with him, didn't try to impress him, didn't seem to register him at all as a person who required managing. That bothered him in a way he couldn't articulate. So he did what men like Derek always do with things they can't understand. He decided to make it a joke. Hey, he called across the garage floor on her 4th day loud enough for everyone to hear. Barbie, you find anything in Bay 4 or are you just standing there looking pretty? Megan didn't look up from the engine she was working on. Cracked piston ring, she said. 3rd cylinder. You'd have heard it blow within 200 miles. A few guys nearby exchanged glances. That was exactly the diagnosis Carl had been trying to make for 3 days. Derek's jaw tightened just slightly. Lucky guess, he said. She didn't respond to that either, which to Derek was somehow worse. The laughter came on her 6th day. It was a Saturday, which meant more members were in and out of the garage than usual. Weekends were social as much as they were operational, bikes getting worked on, guys hanging around, the low rumble of conversation filling the space between engine noise. Megan was at the tool bench cleaning a carburetor with methodical focus when Derek came up beside her. He wasn't alone. Four other members drifted over behind him with the easy looseness of men who expected entertainment. Derek reached over and grabbed her left wrist. Not violently, but without asking, the way someone touches an object they've decided belongs to them for a moment. He turned her wrist over and held it up. "What is this?" he said, loudly performing for the room. "A compass with no needle." "What's that supposed to mean, sweetheart?" She didn't pull her arm away immediately. That was the first thing people noticed later when they tried to remember exactly how it happened. She didn't flinch. She didn't react with the kind of instant discomfort a person feels when someone invades their space. She just looked at her own wrist in Derek's grip with the expression of someone observing something from a significant distance. "A broken compass," she said. Her voice was flat and even. "Oh, real poetic." Derek grinned at the men behind him. They were already smiling, already primed. "So what does it mean?" "You're lost. You can't find your way home." He laughed at his own joke. "That actually explains a lot about why you're working here." The laughter spread, not malicious most of it, just the reflexive chuckling of men who didn't think too hard about what they were laughing at. "Did your boyfriend give it to you? Would he break your heart and you put his little broken symbol on your arm forever?" Derek was warming up now. The bigger the audience reaction, the more theatrical he got. "Honey, that's what we call a red flag." More laughter. Megan looked up from her wrist. She looked directly at Derek, and what stopped three men mid-laugh later, when they thought about it, what made the air in that moment feel slightly different from the air around a normal joke was the absence of anything wounded in her eyes. No embarrassment, no anger, no plea for him to stop. Just absolute perfect steadiness, like she had looked at far worse things than Derek Hayes. "You're done," she said quietly. Derek blinked. "Excuse me." "You got your laugh, you're done." The tone wasn't aggressive. It wasn't brittle the way people get when they're trying not to cry. It was the tone of someone who has assessed a situation, made a decision, and is simply announcing the outcome. Derek's face changed. The performance flickered. "I'm done when I say I'm done," he said, and there was a hard edge under it now. "And I'll say what I want about whatever I want in my own garage. You don't like it, find somewhere else to work, sweetheart. Nobody asked you to be here." He let go of her wrist, and then not stepping back, not retreating, but simply shifting his weight in a way that was meant to communicate ownership of the space. He looked around at the other men and said, "Seriously, what's a girl with a broken compass tattoo doing in a Hell's Angels garage? You get lost, honey." The laughter came again, bigger this time, because Derek had reestablished the social order and everyone knew it, or thought they knew it. And then a voice came from the back of the garage, quiet, completely without urgency. But the laughter stopped, like someone had cut a wire. "Enough." Jackson Reed was 56 years old. He had been the president of the Red Canyon Hells Angels chapter for 14 years. Before that, he had been sergeant at arms for 7. Before that, he had spent time in places and situations he didn't discuss and that nobody in the chapter asked about directly. I was not a physically imposing man in the way Derek was. He wasn't particularly tall. He didn't move through rooms with the puffed-up territorial energy that men like Derek cultivated. He kept his gray-streaked beard trimmed. He wore his patch the same way he wore everything, like it was just a part of him, not a costume. What Jackson Reed had was the quality that is rarer and more durable than size or volume. He had weight. When Jackson spoke even once in a quiet voice across a noisy garage, people stopped talking. Not because they feared him exactly, though they did respect what he was capable of, every last one of them, but because they had learned over years of knowing him that when Jackson Reed decided something was worth saying, it was worth hearing. He had been standing in the far corner of the garage near the office door. Nobody had registered him as particularly attentive to what was happening across the floor. Jackson had a way of being present in a room without advertising it, but he had seen everything. And one word from him, one word, and 40 years of Derek Hayes' swagger went completely silent. Derek turned. Jackson wasn't looking at Derek. He was looking at Megan's wrist. More precisely, he was looking at the tattoo. The broken compass. His expression was still, perfectly controlled. But something moved through his eyes fast, like a shadow passing, and then it was gone. And what replaced it was the particular stillness of a man who has just had something confirmed that he already suspected. He crossed the garage slowly. The other men stepped back without being asked. Derek moved aside without quite realizing he was doing it. Jackson stopped in front of Megan. She was still standing exactly where she had been. She had not moved a single inch through any of it. Jackson looked at her face first, then at the tattoo, then back at her face. "How long have you had that?" he asked. His voice was low. The question wasn't aggressive. It wasn't rhetorical. It was the question of someone who needed a specific piece of information. Megan looked at him with the same steady quality she'd had throughout. But something behind her eyes shifted slightly. A calibration. The way a person recalibrates when they realize the conversation has changed from something manageable to something that requires more careful handling. "Long enough," she said. Jackson nodded slowly, like that told him what he needed to know. He turned to the room. "Everybody back to work," he said. Nobody argued. Nobody asked why. The garage simply moved the way it always moved when Jackson gave direction, with the quiet efficiency of people who understood that the direction was not optional. Derek opened his mouth. "Derek," Jackson said without looking at him. Derek closed his mouth. Jackson looked back at Megan. "When you're done with your shift," he said, "come find me." He walked back toward the office. The door closed behind him. And for the rest of that shift, nobody in the garage said a single word about the tattoo. But they talked about everything else. They talked in the low, sideways way that men talk when they don't want to be caught talking. Quick exchanges over engine bays, murmured comments near the tool wall. The kind of conversation that disperses the moment a third person gets close enough to hear. What did Jackson see in that tattoo? Why did he look at her like that? When was the last time they'd seen Jackson Reed cross a room for anybody? A member named Ronnie, who had been with the chapter for 9 years and prided himself on knowing everything worth knowing, sidled up near Megan's bay around 3 in the afternoon under the pretense of looking for a specific wrench. "So," he said, keeping his eyes on the tool wall, "you know Jackson from somewhere." "No," Megan said. She didn't look up from the engine. "He seemed to recognize you," Ronnie said. "He recognized the tattoo," she said. Ronnie looked at her then. "What does that mean?" Megan reached past him for a socket wrench, found the size she needed, and went back to the engine. "It means what it means," she said. Ronnie stood there for a few seconds, waiting to see if she'd add anything. She didn't. He walked away with no wrench and no answers, which was a deeply unsatisfying combination. Mine. The sun had gone a range by the time Megan finished her shift. She cleaned her tools the same way she always did, methodically, in order each one returning to its exact place. She washed her hands at the utility sink. She pulled on her jacket. Then she walked to Jackson's office and knocked twice. "Come in," he said. The office was small and functional. A desk with paperwork stacked on it in a way that suggested organization, not chaos. A map of the region on one wall with certain roads marked. A single shelf with 3 books on it. She clocked the titles in less than a second. Without making it obvious, she was reading them. Jackson was behind the desk. He had a coffee mug in his hand and was watching her with the same focused quality he had had all day. She sat in the chair across from him without being asked. He appreciated that. She could tell. "You know why I wanted to talk to you," he said. It wasn't a question. "The tattoo," she said. "The tattoo," he confirmed. He set his coffee down. He leaned forward slightly, elbows on the desk, and looked at her the way people look at something they are trying to see clearly. "Where did you serve?" he asked. The word landed in the room like something solid. Megan held his gaze. "I didn't say I served anywhere." "No," Jackson said. "You didn't. I'm saying it." A beat. "Arizona Emergency Response Unit," she said. "Contract assignment. Mountain Rescue Division, Search and Rescue Disaster Response. I was with them for 4 years. Jackson nodded slowly. "And before that?" Another beat, slightly longer. "Before that," she said, "was before that." Jackson studied her face. He was, she realized, very good at reading people. Not the obvious surface reading that most people did, expression, body language, tone. I was reading something deeper, the architecture beneath all of that. "I know what that tattoo means," he said quietly. Megan's jaw shifted slightly. Just slightly. "A lot of people have compass tattoos," she said. "Not like that one," Jackson said. "Not broken like that. Not on the inside of the left wrist. Not with the needle gone." He paused. "The Arizona Emergency Response Unit had a tradition. Their rescue teams. When they lost someone in the field, when there was nothing more they could do, they marked it. Compass with the needle removed. Because they were the people who were supposed to point the way home for everyone else. And when they couldn't," he stopped. The room was very quiet. It means you were there, he said. Not just near it, there, right in the middle of it. Megan was completely still. What do you know about it? She asked. Her voice had not changed in tone or volume, but there was something new underneath it, something carefully contained. Jackson was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I know because I was there too. The silence that followed was the kind that has texture, the kind you can feel. Megan looked at Jackson looked at her. The Ridgecrest collapse, he said. 2017. The warehousing district. 4 buildings. Something happened to Megan's face that was almost imperceptible. A microsecond of something, not weakness, not grief, exactly, before it was controlled and contained again. But Jackson caught it, because he recognized it. You were in the 3rd building, he said, in southwest corner. You went in twice. The second time the structure was already... He stopped. There were people alive in that corner. They found them because you marked the walls. Megan said nothing. I was in the command tent that night, Jackson said. I was consulting with the state emergency management team. I saw the reports. I saw your name. A long moment. There were 23 people in that structure, Megan said. Her voice was careful and measured and completely controlled the way voices get when the alternative is something the person cannot afford in a room with someone they've just met. We got 19 out. Yes, Jackson said. 4 didn't make it, she said. Yes. She looked at the tattoo on her wrist. 4 lines, she said quietly. 1 for each. The compass is for the whole unit, for the whole job, for all the times we got it right and all the times we... She stopped. The needle is gone because a broken compass is the only honest symbol. You can't always point people home. Sometimes you try with everything you have, and it still isn't enough. Jackson was quiet for a moment. Why are you here? He asked. Not accusatory, genuinely curious. Megan looked at him. Because I needed work, she said. You could find work anywhere, he said. Mechanic skills like yours, you could work in any shop in any city. Why this garage? Why Red Canyon? She looked at him steadily. Red Canyon has the best terrain in the state for search and rescue practice, she said. The canyon networks the elevation, changes the unstable soil composition. I wanted to be near it. I wanted to stay sharp. A beat. And I'm good with engines, and your job listing was open. That's all. Jackson studied her for a long moment. Then he said simply, okay. He picked up his coffee. He looked at the map on the wall. He looked back at her. You did good work today, he said, with the soft tail, with the coolant line, good instincts. Thank you, she said. Derek's an idiot, he said. His tone was matter-of-fact, like a weather report. Something at the corner of Meg's mouth moved, not quite a smile, but something adjacent to it. I've met worse, she said. I believe you, said Jackson Reed. She left the office at 6:47. She walked through the empty garage most of the day. Shift had gone the evening. Guys weren't in yet, and she picked up her backpack from the hook near Bay 4, and she walked out into the October air. The desert evening was cooling fast the way it does out there, temperature dropping like a stone the moment the sun loses its angle. She stood outside the garage for a moment, her backpack over one shoulder, and she looked up at the darkening sky. She thought about the 4 names she carried on her wrist. She thought about the fact that after years of moving from town to town, keeping to the surface of things, staying light enough to disappear, she had just told a stranger the truest sentence she had said out loud in 3 years. 4 didn't make it. She exhaled slowly. Then she pulled her jacket tighter and started walking toward the motel on Route 9, where she was renting a room by the week. She did not think about whether she was going to stay in Red Canyon. She thought about the way Jackson Reed had looked at her tattoo. Not with mockery or curiosity or the uncomfortable sentimentality people sometimes aimed at visible trauma, but with recognition, with the specific quiet respect of someone who understood what that symbol cost. She had not felt seen like that in a very long time. It unsettled her. She was not sure yet whether that was a good thing. The next morning she was back in Bay 4 at 7:15. Carl raised an eyebrow when she walked in. You're early, he said. There's a touring bike in Bay 2 that's been running rough, she said. I want to get at the fuel injection system before the day gets busy. Carl stared at her for a second. Nobody assigned you that bike, he said. I know, she said. She was already walking toward Bay 2. Carl watched her go. He picked up his coffee. Okay then, he said to nobody in particular. By 8:30, she had identified a fouled injector and a partially clogged fuel filter that together had been causing the rough idle and intermittent power loss that the bike's owner had been complaining about for 6 weeks. She had the parts on order before 9. At 9:15, Derek Hayes walked into the garage. He saw Megan at bay 2. He stood still for a moment with the particular stillness of a man recalculating. He walked to the coffee station. He poured himself a cup. He kept his back to the garage floor longer than was necessary. Then he turned around. He walked to bay 2. He stopped near the edge of it. Megan looked up. "That touring bike," Derek said. "What about it?" she said. "Terry's been trying to get that thing running right for 6 weeks," he said. "He's been going crazy." "Fouled injector and a clogged fuel filter," she said. "Parts are coming in this afternoon." Derek was quiet for a moment. "Okay," he said. He started to walk away. Then he stopped. He turned back. "Hey," he said. Megan waited. "Yesterday was—" He stopped. Tried again. "The thing with the tattoo." That was— He stopped again. His jaw moved. He was not a man built for this kind of sentence. "Jackson talked to me," he said finally. "Okay," she said. "He didn't tell me anything," Derek said quickly. He made clear that He stopped. "I'm just saying, I don't know your story, and I made a joke out of something I didn't understand." Megan looked at him for a long moment. "Okay," she said again. Derek waited to see if she was going to add something. She went back to the engine. He walked away. And in the particular economy of that garage, in that chapter, in that world, that exchange, as minimal as it was, meant something. Not everything, but something. She had been working in the garage for 9 days when Tyler Brooks crashed his motorcycle. Tyler was 24, the youngest member of the chapter by several years, full of the reckless energy of someone who hasn't yet had a real collision with consequence. He was not careless exactly, he knew how to ride. He was skilled enough, but he had the particular blindness of youth, the sensation of being fast and alive and untouchable that makes people take the wrong line on a turn at exactly the wrong moment. He went down on the canyon road about 3 miles from the garage. Somebody saw it happen and called it in. Within 6 minutes, 5 Hells Angels members had ridden out. Megan was already in the garage parking lot by the time anyone thought to tell her, because she had heard the tone of the call on Carl's radio and had read it correctly before anyone verbalized what it meant. She pulled her backpack from the hook in Bay 4, the same backpack she'd arrived with, and she was already outside when Ronnie came out to say they were heading to the canyon road. "Get in," he said, gesturing at his truck. She got in. They were there in less than 4 minutes. Tyler was conscious when they arrived, which was better than it might have been, but he had a bad laceration on his right forearm, potential head trauma, and the way his left leg was positioned suggested a fracture. His motorcycle had gone down on the rocky shoulder and slid 30 feet. He was about 15 feet from the edge of a significant drop. 3 members got there first, and they were doing what untrained people do, crouching near him, talking at him, one of them already reaching to try to lift him. "Stop," Megan said. She said it the way Jackson had said enough, once flat without room for interpretation. The member who had been reaching for Tyler stopped. Megan moved past him, dropped to one knee beside Tyler, and put 2 fingers to his neck. She looked at his pupils. She looked at the leg. She looked at the arm. She did all of this in roughly 8 seconds, and then she turned to the men standing around her. "Don't move him," she said. "The leg is fractured. Possibly the femur. You move him wrong, you create a secondary injury. Is anyone calling 911? "Already called," said Ronnie. "ETA, 12 minutes maybe." "Okay." She was already opening her backpack. "Keep him talking. I need his name. I need him responding verbally. I need him focused on something other than the pain." She looked at the guy nearest Tyler's head. "You talk to him. Ask him about his bike. Ask him about anything. Keep him engaged. Keep him still. Can you do that?" The guy nodded immediately. "I need something to dress this arm," she said, and she already had what she needed from her pack, a clean compression bandage still in its packaging. She had her jacket off in 2 seconds, and she folded it and placed it under Tyler's right arm to elevate it, and she began dressing the laceration with the calm and precision of someone who has done this before. Not once, many times. Tyler, who had been making the low, tight sound of someone trying not to panic, looked at her with wide eyes. Is it bad?" he said. "You crashed your bike?" She said not unkindly. "It's not great, But you're going to be okay. I need you to keep talking to me. What's your name? Tyler Brooks. Tyler, okay. Tyler, I need you to tell me if anything feels numb. Feet, hands, anywhere. Tell me right now. No, I can feel everything. My leg is, he hissed. I know. Don't try to move it. Leave it exactly where it is. The ambulance is coming. They're going to take care of it properly. Your job right now is to keep breathing steadily and keep talking to me. Can you do that? Yeah, he said. His voice was steadier. Yeah, okay. Good, she said. Around her, the other members had gone quiet. Not the quiet of people who didn't know what to say. The quiet of people watching something and understanding without being able to fully articulate it that they were watching competence. Real competence. The kind that doesn't announce itself, doesn't perform, just moves. The ambulance arrived in 11 minutes. The paramedics, when they got to Tyler, found him calm, responsive, with a properly dressed wound, a fractured femur that had not been moved or aggravated, and vital signs that were stable. One of the paramedics looked at Megan. You do this, he said, meaning the field dressing, the stabilization, the whole setup. Yes, she said. He nodded slowly. Good work, he said. She picked up her jacket. She repacked her backpack. She walked back toward Ronnie's truck. The 5 Hells Angels members standing on that canyon road watched her go. Not one of them said a word. But something had shifted in all of them. Something quiet and irrevocable. The woman with the broken compass tattoo had just shown them something they could not unhear, could not unsee, could not put back in the box of just a mechanic or just a girl with a strange tattoo. She had shown them what she was made of, and the garage would never be entirely the same place after that afternoon. That evening, Jackson Reed was in his office when Derek knocked on the door. Come in, Jackson said. Derek came in and closed the door behind him. He stood near it, which was unusual. Derek was generally a man who entered rooms like he owned them. The thing with Tyler today, Derek said. I heard, Jackson said. She handled it better than any of us would have. Derek said. Better than I would have. Jackson looked at him. I know what you're building up to, Derek. I'm not building up to anything, Derek said. Then I want to know who she is. You know something. You knew something yesterday when you saw that tattoo. And now, he gestured vaguely, meaning the canyon road, meaning Tyler, meaning all of it. I want to know. Jackson was quiet for a long moment. That's not my story to tell, he said. Then whose is it? Derek said. Hers, said Jackson simply. Derek stood there. She's going to leave, he said. She's not staying, you can tell. She's got that look. She's already thinking about the next place. She doesn't think of this as Derek, Jackson said. Derek stopped. Some people have to earn the sense that there's a reason to stay, Jackson said. That takes time, and it can't be rushed. Derek looked at him for a long moment. What did she do? He said quietly. Not aggressive, genuinely asking. Jackson looked at the map on his wall. She carried people out of places they couldn't carry themselves out of, he said. And some she couldn't carry, and she marked every single one. And she kept going. The room was very still. That tattoo, Jackson said quietly, isn't decoration. It isn't a story she tells. It's a debt she carries. And before you or anyone else in this chapter makes another joke about it, I want you to think about whether you've ever carried anything that heavy. Derek didn't have an answer to that. He nodded once. He left. Jackson sat in his office for a long time after that. He thought about a night in 2017 in a command tent watching a report come in about a structural collapse in the Ridgecrest warehousing district. He thought about a name he'd seen on a responder list. He thought about the numbers 23 and 19 out. He thought about the 4 that didn't come home. He closed his eyes. Then he opened them and he looked at the map and he thought, she's here now, in Red Canyon, working in this garage, running from something that cannot be run from. Sometimes he thought people end up exactly where they're supposed to be, even if they don't know it yet, even if they spend the whole time looking at the door. The broken compass on Megan Callahan's wrist caught the light differently as the days got shorter and the winter crept into the high desert. She didn't know that 40 men were slowly, quietly, without ever saying it out loud to each other, beginning to rethink everything they thought they'd seen when she walked in the door. She didn't know that Derek Hayes had started telling people in the low sideways way of the garage that the woman in Bay 4 knew what she was doing. She didn't know that Tyler Brooks, when he was discharged from the hospital 3 days later, came straight to the garage with his arm in a sling and asked specifically for her because He wanted to say thank you directly to the person who kept him calm on the worst afternoon of his life. She didn't know any of that yet. She was in Bay 4 working on an engine. She was focused on the problem in front of her. She was doing exactly what she had always done. She was keeping her hands busy so her head didn't have to think too hard about what she was carrying. The broken compass caught the light. The needle was still gone. And somewhere in the back of her mind, in the place she didn't let herself look at too often, four names waited patiently. The way the dead always wait, without urgency, without accusation, without any desire at all. Just there. Just present. Just the weight that didn't go away. The compass that pointed nowhere. The truest thing she owned. The garage hummed around her. Red Canyon, Arizona, in the last week of October. And Megan Callahan, 29 years old, with her golden hair and her quiet eyes and her heavy wrists, kept working. She always kept working. It was the only thing she had ever known how to do. Tyler Brooks came back to the garage on a Tuesday. His arm was in a sling. His face still had the yellowish bruising around the jaw from where the helmet had compressed on impact. He walked with a slight hitch in his step. The fractured femur was pinned. The surgeon had done good work, but the body remembers what happened to it, even after the damage is repaired. He stood in the doorway of the garage for a moment, and then he asked Carl where she was. Carl pointed toward Bay 4 without looking up from his clipboard. Tyler walked across to the garage floor. Several members who were there that morning watched him without making it obvious they were watching. There was something in the air that morning, not tension exactly, but attention. The focused, sideways attention of people who understand that something worth seeing is about to happen and don't want to miss it by looking directly at it. Megan heard him coming. She always heard people coming, the weight distribution of a person's footsteps, the slight asymmetry that meant a limp, the particular sound of someone who was moving toward a specific destination rather than just moving through a space. She didn't look up from the engine until he was standing at the edge of Bay 4. Then she looked up. Tyler Brooks looked at her for a moment with the particular expression of someone who rehearsed a speech and is now discovering that the actual moment is different from the rehearsed version. "I wanted to say thank you," he said, "in person, because I think—" He stopped. He tried again. "I think if you hadn't been there, I might have done something stupid, like tried to stand up, or panicked. And with the femur the way it was, the surgeon said if I'd moved wrong—" He stopped again. "Anyway, I wanted to say it in person." Megan set down her tool. She looked at him steadily. "How's the leg?" she said. "It'll be okay," he said. 8 weeks, they said, before I can ride again. Feels like forever." He paused. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure," she said. "Where did you learn all that, the field stuff? The way you just took over, like you'd done it 100 times. Megan held his gaze for a moment. "Because I had," she said simply. Tyler nodded slowly. He looked like he wanted to ask more. He looked like he had about 6 more questions lined up directly behind the first one, each one pressing against the next. But something in her stillness made him understand that this was the answer she was giving, and that asking for more right now would be the wrong move. "Well," he said, "thank you. That's all I wanted to say." "Take care of the leg," she said. "Don't rush it." "I won't," he said. He turned to go. Then he stopped. He turned back. "For what it's worth," he said, "what Derek did with the tattoo, that first week, that's not what this place is. Most of us aren't like that." Megan looked at him for a long moment. Something moved in her eyes, not softness exactly, but something that wasn't the controlled distance she usually carried. "I know," she said, and she meant it. Tyler left, and 3 members who had been watching from across the garage floor turned back to their work without saying a word. But all 3 of them were thinking the same thing. They just didn't know how to say it yet. What they were thinking was, she belongs here. Not as a charity, not as a novelty. She belongs here the way the best mechanics belong, because the work is better when she's doing it and the room is steadier. And something that was slightly off balance before she arrived has begun to correct itself. They were thinking it. They just hadn't figured out yet that you can think a thing for a very long time before you understand what it means. Megan picked up her tool and went back to the engine. Outside, the November wind started coming down off the canyon ridges, the way it does in Red Canyon, cutting and dry and smelling of dust in elevation. The garage doors rattled slightly in their frames. She didn't notice. Or if she did, she gave no sign. She just kept working. That was the thing about Megan Callahan. that the people in that garage were only beginning to understand. She was not performing steadiness. She was not managing her reactions in the way that people manage things. They're afraid will get out of hand if they don't maintain grip on them. She was steady the way certain structures are steady because of what she was built from and what she had survived and what that surviving had done to the architecture of her. She had been in collapsing buildings, literally. She had crawled through spaces that were shifting and groaning around her with 40 pounds of equipment on her back and a person somewhere ahead of her in the dark who needed to be found. She had made decisions in those spaces with 10 seconds and no information that she would carry the consequences of for the rest of her life. After that, a garage full of bikers who didn't know what to make of her was not something she had to manage. It was just Tuesday. It was just the next place, the next job, the next engine. She was very good at next. The trouble with being very good at next was that it also meant being very good at leaving, at not accumulating, at keeping your attachments light enough to lift when the time came to go. She had been in Red Canyon for 3 weeks. She was starting to feel the pull of the next place, not because she was unhappy, not because anything bad had happened, but because when things started to feel too much like staying, her whole system got quiet and cold in some deep navigational instinct. The same instinct that used to tell her when a structure was about to shift, told her it was time to move. She was working on an engine. She was thinking about Phoenix. She was thinking about whether there was good mechanic work in Phoenix and whether the terrain around it had the kind of technical difficulty she needed to stay sharp and whether the distances were manageable and whether you're thinking about leaving. She looked up. Jackson Reed was standing at the edge of Bay 4. She had not heard him coming. That was unusual. That was actually startling in a way she would not allow herself to show because she heard everything. She looked at him. I work fast, she said. I think ahead. You're measuring the exit, he said. Not accusatory, just observational. A pause. I always measure exits, she said. Old habit. From the job, he said. From the job, she confirmed. He looked at the engine she was working on, then back at her. You want coffee? He said. She looked at him. Okay, she said. They went to the small break room off the side of the garage, which had a coffee maker that was older than half the members and produced coffee that tasted like it had very firm opinions. Jackson poured 2 cups and set one in front of her and sat across the small table. How long do you usually stay? He asked. In a place. She wrapped both hands around the mug. Depends. 3 weeks usually, sometimes 6. Once I made it almost 4 months. What made you leave that one? She looked at the coffee. Someone started knowing too much about me, she said. And you left because they knew too much, Jackson said. Or because you liked the fact that they were learning. She looked up at him. That was a perceptive question. That was the kind of question that required a real answer or a deliberate deflection, and she had to decide in about 1 second which one she was going to give. I don't know, she said, which was true, and which surprised her by being what came out. Jackson nodded. He drank his coffee. He seemed in no hurry. I've been doing this a long time, he said, running this chapter. You see a lot of people come through. You can tell pretty quickly the ones who are passing through from the ones who are running toward something they don't see yet. He paused. You're in the second group. You just haven't stopped moving long enough to notice what's in front of you. Megan looked at him. That's a lot of reading from 3 weeks, she said. It's enough, he said. She was quiet for a moment. Jackson, she said, I appreciate whatever this is and what you did that first day stopping Derek. I don't, she stopped. I'm not used to being, she stopped again. Defended, he said. She didn't answer. That's not a weakness, he said quietly. Not being used to something isn't the same as not deserving it. The break room was very quiet. From the garage, the sound of metal and engines continued steady and familiar, the noise of work being done. Megan Callahan, who had gone into collapsing buildings and come back out the other side, sat in a break room with bad coffee and felt something crack just slightly. Just a hairline fracture in the controlled surface she presented to the world, and she pressed her hands harder around the mug and didn't let it widen. You said you were there, she said. 2017. Ridgecrest. I was, Jackson said. What were you consulting on, she said. State emergency management, he said. Before this, he gestured vaguely, meaning the chapter, the garage, Red Canyon. I spent 15 years in emergency services, federal level eventually. I left for reasons. He paused. Personal reasons. She looked at him. The people who can't save, she said. He met her eyes. Yeah, he said. Two people who had both hit the wall, that emergency responders hit the one that is built from accumulated loss from the arithmetic of who you got to and who you didn't. Sat across a small table with bad coffee and understood each other in the particular way that only people who have stood in the same fire can understand each other. Why the hell's angels? She asked. Why not? He said. Then because it was real, because the people in this chapter are exactly who they say they are. Complicated, flawed, loud, but real. He looked at his coffee. After years of institutions and bureaucracy and the gap between what the system says it does and what it actually does, I needed real. She was quiet for a moment. I get that, she said. I know you do, he said. He stood up. He collected his coffee mug. Think about staying a little longer, he said. Not forever, just a little longer. He walked. Megan sat at the table for a while. She thought about Phoenix. She thought about what Jackson had said. She thought about Tyler Brooks coming in with his arm in a sling to say thank you in person. She thought about the sound the garage made, the particular layered sound of it. Engines and voices and the specific rhythm of that building, full of those people, and how in 3 weeks it had become familiar enough that she already knew what it meant without having to think about it. She thought about how familiarity was the thing she had been running from for years. She thought about how running from something and being free of it were not the same thing at all. She drank the rest of her bad coffee. Then she went back to Bay 4. She did not think about Phoenix again that day. That it was the second week of November, and none of them knew yet what was coming. None of them knew that by the end of that month, everything in Red Canyon was about to change. That trouble was already forming the way desert storms form invisible until they were directly overhead and then suddenly total. That the break in this quiet was coming, and when it came, it would arrive, not with warning, but with impact. But that morning, Megan went back to the engine, and she stayed. One more day, then another, then the week turned over, and Red Canyon held. The first sign of trouble came on a Thursday night. It came as a phone call to Jackson, which he took in his office with the door closed. The call lasted 11 minutes. Nobody heard what was said, but when Jackson came out of his office, 3 members who happened to be nearby noticed that his face had a particular quality it only had when something had shifted from the general category of manageable problems to the specific category of serious ones. He called a meeting for the following morning. All 40 members. Mandatory. Megan was not a member. She was not invited to the meeting. She came in at 7:15, as usual, went to Bay 4 as usual, and noticed immediately that the garage had a different frequency that morning. A tension under the surface noise. Men who were usually loose and conversational were quieter, more contained, moving with a kind of purposefulness that had nothing to do with the work on the bikes. Ronnie came past Bay 4 around 8. Meeting in the main hall, he said without stopping. You might want to stay in the garage. Why, she said. He kept walking. She stayed in the garage. She could hear the meeting happening in the adjoining room. Not the words, not clearly, but the tone of it. A meeting where people are being told something they do not like hearing. Where the energy in the room is contained only by the authority of the person running it. And that authority is the only thing keeping 40 people from reacting before they've finished processing. The meeting lasted 40 minutes. When the members came back into the garage, the tension had shifted. It was still there, but it had changed character. It had gone from the tension of people hearing something to the tension of people who have heard something and are now deciding what to do with it. Derek Hayes was the first one she could read clearly. He was angry, not the loud performative anger he sometimes aimed at smaller targets. Real anger, the kind that sits in the chest and pulls at everything around it. He came to Bay 4. You okay, he said, which surprised her because it was the first time he had asked her anything like that. I'm fine, she said. What happened? He looked around the garage, then back at her. A group called the Black Vultures, he said. You know them? No, she said. They're a rival outfit, been operating out of the southern part of the state for a couple years, moving north. He paused. Last night they hit one of our storage facilities, out on the old mine road about 12 miles east. They broke in, destroyed some equipment, and left a message. What kind of message? She said. Derek's jaw tightened. Written on the wall, he said, your secrets won't stay buried. She kept her expression steady. What secrets? She said. He looked at her. That's the question, isn't it? He said. She set down her tool. She looked at him directly. How much damage? She said. Equipment mostly. Some inventory. The building structure is intact. He paused. Nobody was there when it happened. They knew the timing, knew when the facility would be empty. She was quiet for a moment, thinking. Inside information, she said. Derek stared at her. That's what Jackson thinks, he said slowly. How many people knew the facility schedule? She said. Chapter members, a few associates. He paused. You're thinking like he stopped. What? She said. Like an investigator, he said. She picked up her tool. I'm thinking like someone who's seen how these things work, she said. An attack like that clean-timed message left, that's not random. That's a message designed to produce a specific reaction. Anger, Derek said. Not just anger, she said. Action. They want you to ride out angry and hit back without thinking. That's the whole point. Derek was quiet for a long moment. I told Jackson we should go out tonight, he said. Hit them where that's what they want, she said. Derek looked at her sharply. You don't know what, that message, she said. Your secrets won't stay buried. What does that mean to you? He was silent. It means they know something, she said, or they want you to think they know something. Either way, they're trying to get inside your head before they make their next move. If you ride out tonight angry and underprepared, you're doing exactly what they planned for. The garage around them had gone quiet. Several members nearby had drifted in close enough to hear without appearing to. Derek looked at her for a long moment. His expression was complicated. Anger, yes, but also underneath it, the particular discomfort of a man who has just been told something he doesn't want to accept. Because accepting it requires letting go of a reaction that felt justified and righteous 30 seconds ago. Who are you, he said, not mockingly, genuinely. She looked at him. Someone who's learned the hard way what happens when you move on emotion instead of information, she said. He held her gaze. Then he turned and walked away. But he walked toward Jackson's office, not toward the parking lot, not toward his bike. That small direction change 4 steps to the left instead of 4 steps to the right was Megan understood the only thing that mattered in that moment. She went back to the engine. She kept her hands moving, but her mind was somewhere else entirely. Because what Derek had said, your secrets won't stay buried, had caught on something inside her. A snag, the way a piece of thread catches on a rough edge and pulls just slightly at the fabric connected to it. She didn't know what the Black Vultures knew about the Hells Angels chapter. But she knew something else. She knew that whoever was behind that message understood exactly how to use information as a weapon, not by revealing it, by implying it, by making the target uncertain about what was known and what wasn't, so that the target's own imagination filled in the worst possible version. That was sophisticated. That was not the work of a disorganized rival outfit looking for territory. That was a person who understood psychology. And that person, whoever they were, was aiming directly at something the chapter valued enough to protect. She was still turning that over when Jackson appeared at the entrance to Bay 4. He didn't say anything for a moment. He just looked at her with that focused, steady quality of his. Derek told me what you said, he said. Okay, she said. He didn't like hearing it, Jackson said. I know, she said, but he's not riding out tonight, Jackson said. She looked up. None of them are, he said. Not yet. We're going to assess first. She looked at him. Good, she said. He was still for a moment. I want you in the room when we do, he said. She set down the tool. I'm a mechanic, she said. You're the person who just stopped 40 men from making the worst decision they could make right now, he said. In about 30 seconds, using 3 sentences. So you can call yourself whatever you want. He paused. I want you in the room. She held his gaze for a long moment. The snag she'd felt at the message, your secrets won't stay buried, was still there, still pulling. Jackson, she said, what does it mean, that message? What's buried that they might know? Something moved across his face, just briefly. Then it was controlled again. That's what we need to figure out, he said. Come to the meeting tonight, 7 o'clock. He left. Megan stood in Bay 4. Your secrets won't stay buried. She looked at the tattoo on her wrist, the broken compass, and for the first time since she had arrived in Red Canyon, she felt something that was not the controlled, managed weight she always carried. She felt something that was closer to fear. Not for herself, she was past the point where personal fear was a dominant frequency for her. For them, For these people who had started slowly and reluctantly, and somewhat accidentally to feel like something she did not have a clean category for. She thought about the meeting that night. She thought about walking into a room of 40 Hells Angels members who were angry and uncertain and looking for direction, and what it would mean to be the person in that room who said, "Slow down, think, don't let them use your emotions against you." She thought about how much easier it would be to pack her backpack and leave tonight. She thought about Phoenix. She thought about Tyler Brooks saying that's not what this place is. She thought about Jackson saying some people have to earn the sense that there's a reason to stay. She thought about the 4 names on her wrist, the 4 she couldn't carry out. And she understood something in that moment standing in Bay 4, with engine grease on her hands and fear for other people in her chest, that she had been running from for 3 years. The broken compass didn't mean she had no direction. It meant she had lost the certainty that direction is always enough, and that losing it hadn't broken her. It had changed how she moved through the world, slower, more careful, more honest about what she knew and what she didn't. And maybe the thought arrived quietly without fanfare. Maybe that was exactly the kind of person who could help 40 men in a garage in Red Canyon, Arizona, not make the worst mistake of their lives on a Thursday night in November. She cleaned her tools. She washed her hands. She was at the 7 o'clock meeting 20 minutes early. When she walked in, the room was already filling up. The energy was different from the morning meeting, still contained, still tight, but with a harder edge. The processing phase was over. These men were ready to decide. Several of them looked at her when she came in, a few with surprise, a few with the particular narrowed look of people recalibrating someone they thought they had a category for. Derek was across the room. He looked at her when she entered. He didn't say anything, but he moved slightly to his left, making room. She sat down. Jackson came in 2 minutes later, and the room went quiet, the same way it always went quiet when Jackson entered a space completely and immediately. He stood at the front of the room and he looked around at all of them. "Before we talk about what we're going to do," he said, "we're going to talk about what we know. Because I will not have this chapter making a move based on anger instead of information." He paused. "And I'm asking Megan to speak first because she's already said the most important thing any of us have said today." 40 heads turned toward her. She felt the weight of it, not performance, not pressure, weight. The weight of people who needed something real and were looking at her to provide it. She thought about collapsing buildings. She thought about the decisions you make in the dark with 10 seconds and no information. She stood up. She looked at them. "Your secrets won't stay buried," she said. "That's not a statement about what they know. That's a question designed to make you think they know more than they do. If they actually had something, they'd use it, not hint at it." She looked around the room. "They want you looking inward, asking each other who talked, creating fractures in trust inside this room. That's the actual weapon, not whatever they did to that storage facility last night." The room was completely silent. "So before you ask who talked to the black vultures," she said, "ask a different question. Ask what they're trying to protect you from looking at while you're looking at each other." Jackson let the silence sit for 3 full seconds. Then he said, "She's right." And the meeting turned in a different direction entirely. It went on for 2 more hours. Megan did not speak again until she was asked directly, but she listened to everything. She cataloged everything. She built a picture in her head, not just of the black vultures and their tactics, but of the chapter itself, its vulnerabilities, its strengths, the dynamics between members, the places where confidence was genuine, and the places where it was covering something that needed attention. She was good at that, reading a group, understanding the architecture under the social surface. She had spent 4 years being trained to do it by people who needed it done well because lives depended on it. By the end of the meeting, 3 things had been decided. They would not retaliate tonight. They would gather information before they made any move, and they would examine their own internal procedures to understand how the black vultures had known the facility timing. It was the right call. Every one of those decisions was the right call. And walking out of that meeting room, Ronnie appeared at her shoulder and said quietly so only she could hear, "You've done this before. This specific thing. Not just emergencies. This, crisis. Group dynamics under pressure. Where did you actually come from, Megan?" She looked at him. "Bay 4, she said. He snorted, and she almost smiled. That night alone, in her room at the Route 9 motel, she lay on the bed and looked at the ceiling and thought about what she had said in that meeting and what it had cost her to say it because it had cost her something the way being visible always cost her something. She thought about the expression on Jackson's face when he said she's right. Not pride, not vindication, just the calm certainty of a person who saw something true being spoken aloud in a room that needed to hear it. She looked at the tattoo, 4 names. She said them to herself in the dark the way she always did before sleep. She said all 4 names, then she closed her eyes. Red Canyon in November, the wind outside, the canyon ridges above the town silent and enormous and older than anything else for miles. She was still here. She had not packed her backpack. She had not thought about Phoenix in 11 hours. She did not know what that meant, but she stayed very still in the dark and let herself not know. And somewhere in the chapter in houses and apartments and wherever the 40 men of the Red Canyon Hells Angels slept that night, something had shifted, quietly without ceremony. The woman from Bay 4 had walked into their meeting. She had told them the truth when the truth was exactly what they needed. And none of them were sure yet what to do with the fact that the person they had underestimated most completely was turning out to be the person they could least afford to lose. It was only the second week of November. The black vultures were still out there. Whatever was buried was still buried. And Megan Callahan, with her broken compass and her 4 names and her very good instincts, was still here. Still working, still staying, one more day. The information gathering started the next morning, and it was not clean work. It never was. Megan knew that from experience. The space between something happening and understanding why it happened was always messier than people wanted it to be. People wanted a clean line action cause culprit. The reality was always a tangle, always overlapping motives and incomplete information in the particular human tendency to see the pattern that confirmed what you already believed instead of the pattern that was actually there. Jackson assigned 3 members to quietly trace the facility schedule, who had access to it, who had communicated it, whether anything digital had been compromised. He assigned 2 more to gather whatever could be learned about the Black Vulture's recent movements. He kept Derek close not because Derek was the best analytical thinker in the room, but because Derek with a directed task was manageable, and Derek without one was a problem waiting to happen. Megan was in Bay 4. She was always in Bay 4, but Jackson came to her at 9:30 that morning with a folded piece of paper and set it on the edge of her workbench without saying anything. She picked it up. It was a list of 6 names, the members and associates who had known the storage facility schedule in the week before the attack. She looked at the list. She looked at Jackson. "You want me to read this?" she said. "I want you to think about it," he said. "These are your people," she said. "Yes," he said. "You are asking me to look at whether one of them is the problem," she said. "I'm asking you to look at the list the way you looked at that meeting room 2 nights ago," he said. "The way you read a group. You did it without realizing anyone was watching." She folded the paper back up. "I noticed," she said. "I know," he said. "I want to know what you see." She held the folded paper. "Give me until this afternoon," she said. He nodded and left. She put the paper in her jacket pocket and went back to the engine. But her mind was somewhere else, and the engine knew it. She made a small error 20 minutes later. Cross-threading a bolt she would normally have caught, and she stopped, took a breath, and made herself slow down. Slow down and think. She had 6 names. She had the attack itself. She had the message on the wall. She had a rival group that was moving north with enough sophistication to know the timing of a storage facility schedule. And she had 40 men, 39 of whom she was starting to understand, and one of whom might be the crack in the wall. She thought about the message again. Your secrets won't stay buried. She had told the chapter it was a manipulation tactic designed to create internal fracture, and she believed that. But she also knew that the most effective manipulation always had at least one root in reality. You didn't threaten to expose what didn't exist. You threatened to expose what was real and then watch the target scramble to figure out how much you actually knew. So the question wasn't just who leaked the schedule. The question was what they were trying to protect when they did. That was a different question entirely. At noon, Ronnie came to Bay 4 and leaned against the wall with his arms crossed and the expression of a man who wants to say something and is deciding how. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Sure," she said without looking up. "When you were in this meeting the other night, He said, you said they want you looking inward while they protect something you're not looking at. What did you mean by that? What are they protecting? She set down her tool. I don't know yet, she said, but something, an operation, territory, a person, something they need this chapter distracted from noticing. She paused. What's the Black Vulture's primary business? Ronnie was quiet for a moment. Moving things, he said carefully. Through Red Canyon, she said. Silence. Ronnie, she said. Through the Canyon Road, he said. That's the most direct route from the southern supply lines to the northern markets. And this chapter controls the Canyon Road. Has for years, he paused. Not that we don't charge tolls or anything, it's not like that. But our presence here means nothing moves through that road without us knowing about it. She looked at him. So she said slowly, if someone wanted to start moving product through the Canyon Road without the chapter knowing, they'd need the chapter looking somewhere else, Ronnie said. He said it slowly, like the sentence was arriving to him at the same time it was arriving to her. They looked at each other. How long has the Canyon Road been their target, she said. The Black Vultures started showing up in the region about 8 months ago, he said. She picked up the folded paper from her jacket pocket. She opened it. She looked at the 6 names. Which of these people, she said carefully, would have a reason to want the chapter distracted? Not necessarily disloyal, just distracted, occupied with an internal problem instead of watching the road. Ronnie looked at the list from across the bench. He was quiet for a long time. Then he pointed at one name, just touched it with one finger. Didn't say anything. She looked at the name. Tell me about him, she said. Eddie Marsh, Ronnie said. Been with the chapter 6 years. Good guy. I mean, I've always thought so. I don't think he's disloyal. I'm not saying that. He paused. But he's got a brother, younger brother, about 22, who has been running in circles that aren't. He stopped. I don't know this for a fact. I just know what I've heard. Circles connected to the Black Vultures, she said. Ronnie didn't answer, which was an answer. She folded the paper again. I need to talk to Jackson, she said. Megan, Ronnie said. She stopped. Eddie's a good guy. I don't want to be the person who... I'm not going to hang him with a suspicion, she said. I'm going to bring information to the person who should have it. What happens next is Jackson's call, not mine. Ronnie was quiet. Okay, he said. Yeah, okay. She was already walking toward the office. Jackson listened without interrupting. He had that quality, the ability to receive information without reacting to it in real time, to hold it and turn it and look at it from multiple angles before he said a single word. It was one of the things that made him good at what he did. When she finished, he was quiet for a full 30 seconds. You got all this from a list and a conversation, he said. In 3 weeks of watching this chapter, she said. He looked at her. Eddie's a good man, he said. Ronnie said the same thing, she said. That doesn't mean his situation isn't being used. No, Jackson said, it doesn't. He stood up. He went to the window of his office that looked out over the garage floor. He stood there for a moment looking at his chapter, the men moving around the bays, the ordinary machinery of the place he had built over 14 years. If his brother is involved with the Black Vultures, he said quietly, Eddie may not even know what information has been passing through him. People talk to family. They say things at dinner tables they wouldn't say in this building. He paused. It doesn't make Eddie the enemy. It makes him a vulnerability. Yes, she said, and a vulnerability is different from a traitor, he said. Very different, she said. He turned from the window. I need to talk to Eddie, he said. Alone, before this goes any further. He looked at her. What you've done, what you've put together here, this stays between us until I've talked to him. Not Derek, not anyone. Can you do that? That's already my plan, she said. He almost smiled. Go back to Bay 4, he said. Let me handle this. Jackson, she said. He looked at her. Whatever Eddie tells you, she said. The Canyon Road is still the target. Even if you resolve the internal question, they are still coming. This attack was a first move, not a whole strategy. He looked at her for a long moment. I know, he said. She went back to Bay 4. The rest of that afternoon had a different quality to it. The garage moved and worked and made its normal noise, but Megan was tracking something under all of it, the slight changes in how people moved, how they positioned themselves, who talked to whom. She was reading the room the way she had learned to read structures in the field, looking for the places where pressure was building, looking for the places that were about to shift. She saw Jackson pull Eddie Marsh aside at 2:15. She saw them go into the office. She kept her hands on the engine. 32 minutes later, Eddie came out of the office alone. He walked across the garage floor. His face was carefully arranged, but his jaw was tight, and his eyes were doing the particular thing eyes do when a person is holding something very heavy and trying not to show the weight of it. He went to his bay. He picked up a wrench. He set it back down. He picked it up again. Megan looked at him across the garage floor for exactly 2 seconds. Then she looked back at her engine. Jackson came out 10 minutes after Eddie. He met her eyes across the floor and gave a single small nod. She went back to work. At 4 o'clock, Derek found her. He came to Bay 4 with the energy of someone who had been sitting on something all day and finally decided to let it out. Jackson talked to Eddie, he said. She didn't look up. Okay. You told him to, Derek said. I brought Jackson information, she said. He made the call. What kind of information, Derek said. She looked up then. Derek, she said, if Jackson wanted you to know the details, Jackson would have told you. Derek stared at her. This is my chapter, he said. I know, she said, and Jackson is your president, and he handled it, so let him handle it. A beat. You're telling me to back off, he said. I'm telling you the situation is being managed, she said, by the right person. That's a good thing. Derek looked at her for a long moment. The frustration was real. She could see it, the genuine difficulty of being a man who operated on instinct and force and was being asked repeatedly to hold still and trust a process. Does it ever make you crazy? He said. Knowing something and having to wait. She looked at him. Every single day, she said, but knowing and acting aren't the same thing, and acting at the wrong moment can destroy what you were trying to protect. He was quiet. How do you know when it's the right moment? He said. She looked at the tattoo on her wrist. You don't always, she said. Sometimes you just have to make the best call with the information you have and then carry whatever comes from it. Derek looked at the tattoo too, then he looked at her face. The people you lost, he said. Were you there when it happened? The garage kept making its noise around them, metal and air, and the far-off sound of someone's radio. Yes, she said. Did you do everything you could, he said. Yes, she said. Then why do you still carry it like that? He said. Like it's your fault. She was quiet for a moment. Because doing everything you could doesn't always mean it was enough, she said. And I'd rather carry the weight than pretend it doesn't exist. Derek looked at her for a long time. Then he said something that she did not expect from him. Not in that garage, not on that afternoon, not from the man who had grabbed her wrist and made the whole room laugh at her tattoo 3 weeks ago. I lost someone too, he said, a long time ago, a kid from this chapter. He was 20 years old. I was supposed to ride with him that night and I didn't because I had something else going on, and he went out alone and he didn't come back. He stopped. His voice was completely even. The evenness of someone who has said a thing so many times in the private space of their own head that saying it out loud costs a different kind of thing. I've been loud about everything ever since, because loud takes up the space. She looked at him. I know, she said, very quietly. Yeah, he said, I think you do. He walked in, and Megan Callahan stood in Bay 4 and felt something rearrange itself inside her, some long-held categorization of Derek Hayes, of who he was and what he was made of, shifting to accommodate what he had just given her. Not a justification, not an excuse, just the truth of him offered plainly in a 4 o'clock garage without any agenda. She had judged him too. Not out loud, not with a room of men laughing behind. She had put him in a category and kept him there. That wasn't so different. She looked at the engine. She went back to work. The week built toward its end with the particular slow pressure of a situation that hasn't resolved yet. Jackson met with Eddie twice more that week. The information that came back confirmed what Ronnie had suggested. Eddie's younger brother had been running with a group connected to the Black Vultures, and Eddie, without realizing it, had said enough at enough family dinners for the schedule of that storage facility to make its way down the chain. He hadn't sold it. He hadn't traded it. It had leaked through the ordinary, terrible porousness of family love, the way information always leaks when someone you care about is in a world you don't fully see. Jackson told the chapter at the next meeting that there had been a security gap, that it had been identified and closed, and that no one in this room had deliberately compromised the chapter. He said it clearly, and he said it once, and he did not invite debate. Derek, sitting 3 seats from Megan, said nothing. He had already been told. Jackson had made sure of it. But the black vultures were still out there, and the second move came 11 days after the first. It came at 3 in the morning on a Wednesday, and this time it wasn't a storage facility. This time it was Tyler Brooks. Tyler, still recovering, still moving, with the careful deliberateness of a man whose body was 8 weeks behind where his confidence wanted it to be, had been at a gas station on the south end of Red Canyon when two men in Black Vulture's colors walked up to him and delivered a message. Not a physical threat, nothing that could be called assault, just words. But the words were specific. The words mentioned Jackson Reed by name. They mentioned the Canyon Road, and they mentioned a date 14 days from that Wednesday. Tyler called Jackson at 3:12 in the morning. Jackson called Megan at 3:20. She was awake before the phone rang. She had a quality that emergency responders develop over years of being on call. She slept in layers, the deep rest happening beneath a surface that stayed alert for the specific frequency of urgency. The phone was a sound she had already half heard in her sleep before it actually happened. She picked up on the first ring. "I heard you," she said. Jackson told her what Tyler had reported. She was quiet for 3 seconds. 14 days, she said. "Yes," he said. "They're giving you the date," she said. "They want you to know it's coming. They want the 14 days to be unbearable." "Yes," he said. "What's on the Canyon Road in 14 days, she said. Silence. "Jackson," she said. "There's a supply run," he said. "It's scheduled. It's a standard chapter operation. It goes through the Canyon Road." "How many people know about it?" she said. "6, he said. "Same 6 as before minus Eddie." She thought fast. "So they know the supply run exists," she said. "Maybe not the specifics. They're threatening the date to see if you cancel. If you cancel, they learn the date was accurate. If you don't cancel, they know you're going ahead and they can plan accordingly." "Damned either way," Jackson said. "Not necessarily," she said. "What if the supply run happens, but not the way they expect it to happen?" A pause. "You're talking about a change of plan," he said. "I'm talking about using their information against them," she said. "They think they know what's coming. Let them think they're right. Change everything underneath what they can see." Another pause. He was thinking. She could feel him thinking through the phone. "Come in at 7, he said. "I want to talk through this properly." "I'll be there at 6:30, she said. She put the phone down. She lay in the dark for a moment. 14 days. She thought about the collapsing building in Ridgecrest. She thought about the way a structural failure telegraphs itself if you know what to look for. The sounds, the particular settling, the way dust falls from a joint a fraction of a second before the joint gives. She thought about this situation the same way. The Black Vultures had been making sounds for 2 weeks. They had shown their target. They had shown their timeline. They had shown their tactic pressure, implication, the manufactured certainty of someone who wants you to believe they know more than they do. She was starting to see the structure beneath it, and the structure had a weakness. She was at the garage at 6:23. Jackson was already there. They sat in his office with coffee, bad as always, and she laid it out. The supply run had to happen. Canceling it gave the Black Vultures exactly the validation they were looking for. But it needed to happen differently. Route variation, timing shift. And most importantly, they needed to know what the Black Vultures were planning to do with the 14 days, because a group this organized didn't just make a threat and then show up on the day. They were using the 14 days for something. "What?" Jackson said. "Positioning," she said. "They're going to move something through the Canyon Road before the 14 days are up. Using the threat as cover. While you're watching the calendar and preparing for a confrontation on day 14, they make their real move earlier." "The threat is the distraction," and Jackson stared at her. "They're doing to us what we almost did to them," he said. "Yes," she said. He set down his coffee. "You think like them," he said. Not accusatory, wondering. "I think like someone who's been on the other side of bad decisions made under pressure," she said. "I've seen what happens when a team responds to the threat that's visible and misses the one that isn't." He was quiet. "What do we do?" he said. She looked at the map on his wall. "We watch the road," she said. "Not the date, the road." He looked at the map with her. "When?" he said. "Tonight," she said, "and every night until they move. They won't wait 14 days. They'll move in the next 5 or 6. The threat buys them attention on a specific endpoint. They'll use the days before it." Jackson was quiet for a long moment. You know what you're asking this chapter to do, he said. Night surveillance on the canyon road, multiple members, multiple nights, while everyone else is wound up about a confrontation that's 14 days out. I know, she said. They'll want to know why, he said. Tell them the truth, she said. Tell them you have reason to believe the 14 days is misdirection. Tell them the actual move is coming sooner. Your people are smart enough to understand that. He looked at her. They are, he said, most of them. He paused. Derek's going to want to be on the road. Let him, she said. Give him something real to do. He's better with a task. Jackson almost smiled. You figured him out pretty well, he said. He's not complicated, she said. He just needs to be pointed in the right direction. Most people are like that, Jackson said. She looked at him. Yeah, she said. They are. He called the inner circle meeting for 9 that morning. 8 members, the ones whose judgment he trusted most, in a situation that required both discretion and action. Derek was there. Ronnie was there. 5 others whose names Megan had learned and whose capabilities she had been quietly assessing for weeks. She presented what she'd told Jackson. Cleanly, directly, without hedging. The room was quiet when she finished. Then one of the members, a man named Cole, who had been with the chapter for 17 years and whose opinion carried significant weight, looked at her and said, You're saying we've been looking at the wrong end of this the whole time? Yes, she said. Cole looked at Jackson. She's right about this, he said. She's been right about everything else, Jackson said. Cole looked back at Megan. Okay, he said, like it was simple, like it was obvious. The plan was set. 4 members on the canyon road each night, rotating pairs and positions that gave line of sight to the main through route without being visible themselves. No contact, no confrontation if they spotted something. Just documentation, just information, just eyes on the thing that actually mattered. Megan was not asked to be on the road. She did not offer. She was a mechanic. She was a civilian. This was their chapter, their territory, their people. She had given them the intelligence. The rest was theirs to execute. On the 3rd night at 1:40 in the morning, Cole and a member named Rafe spotted 2 Black Vultures vehicles moving through the canyon road with cargo. They had no legitimate reason to be carrying through that route at that hour. They documented it. Plates times cargo descriptions as much as could be determined, and they let it pass. They called Jackson at 1:48. Jackson called Megan at 1:51. You were right, he said, 3 nights early. She closed her eyes. She let out a slow breath. Good, she said. Now you have something real, not a threat, evidence. Yes, he said. Jackson, she said, whatever you do with this, do it right. Not out of anger, not out of wanting to make them pay. Do it the way it needs to be done. A silence. That's interesting advice from someone with 4 names on their wrist, he said. Not unkindly, she looked at the tattoo in the dark of her room. Especially from her, she said. He was quiet. Get some sleep, he said. You too, she said. She put the phone down. She sat in the dark. The canyon outside, enormous and silent, held all its ridges and its old roads and its 1,000-foot drops with the indifference of geography. The way the earth holds everything that happens on it, without judgment, without memory, without anything except the simple fact of being there. She was still here. 3 weeks had become 5 weeks. 5 weeks had become this, 3 in the morning phone calls from Jackson Reed sitting in the dark with the weight of 14 names on her wrist, or she carried, and now, beginning without her permission or her planning, 10 more that she was starting to be responsible for in the way you become responsible for people when you let yourself care what happens to them. She didn't know exactly when it had happened. She didn't know exactly when Red Canyon had stopped being the next place and started being something else. But she was sitting in the dark in November in a motel room on Route 9, and she was not thinking about Phoenix, and she was not measuring exits, and the engine in Bay 4 was waiting for her in the morning, the way things wait for you when you've begun somewhere underneath all your running to think of them as yours. She was still here. She was still staying. One more day. And the canyon road held its evidence in the dark, and the Black Vultures were still moving, and 14 days were counting down to something none of them fully understood yet. But for the first time since Ridgecrest, since the 4 names, since the broken compass that pointed nowhere, Megan Callahan felt something she had almost forgotten the weight of. Not safety, not peace, purpose. The kind that comes not from a job description, but from the particular irreplaceable feeling of being exactly the person in exactly the place at exactly the moment when it matters most. She did not let herself call it home, not yet. But she stopped just for a moment before she lay back down and closed her eyes. She stopped and sat with the feeling. Just for a moment, just long enough to know it was real. The evidence from the canyon road changed everything and nothing at the same time. It changed everything because now the chapter had something concrete. Plates, peanuts, cargo. The black vultures had moved through territory they had no claim to at an hour. That meant exactly what it looked like with cargo. That confirmed what Megan had suspected from the beginning. This wasn't a rivalry between motorcycle clubs over pride in territory. This was a business operation. The Black Vultures were building a route, and the Red Canyon chapter was sitting directly on it, and everything that had happened in the past 3 weeks, the storage facility, the message on the wall, the threat delivered to Tyler. The 14-day countdown was infrastructure. It was the groundwork for removing an obstacle. The obstacle was the chapter. Jackson sat with that for one full day before he brought it to the room. Megan knew he was sitting with it. She could tell by the way he moved through the garage that morning, present, but slightly elsewhere. The way people are when they're turning something serious over and over in a private interior space. She did not interrupt it. She had learned early that Jackson's silence was productive. He was not the kind of man who went quiet because he had nothing to say. I went quiet because he was building something that needed to be solid before he put it in front of other people. She was at the bench in Bay 4 working through a valve adjustment on a bike that had been waiting 2 weeks for attention when Derek appeared beside her at 10 in the morning with 2 cups of coffee from the break room. He set one next to her without asking. She looked at it. She looked at him. "Jackson talked to you this morning," he said. "Briefly," she said. "He's got that face," Derek said. "I know," she said. "The one where he's decided something, but he's waiting to tell us until he's sure we can hear it," Derek said. She almost smiled. "That's a very specific read." 14 years, Derek said. "I know the face." She picked up the coffee. It was bad. It was always bad. She was starting to think the badness of it was actually a feature something reliable in a situation with too many variables. "What do you think he's decided?" Derek said. She looked at him over the rim of the cup. "I think he's decided that this is bigger than a club dispute," she said. "And that bigger means it gets handled differently than a club dispute." Derek was quiet for a moment. "Differently meaning?" "Meaning not with 40 men riding out angry," she said. "Meaning carefully, strategically, in a way that actually ends it instead of escalating it." Derek looked at his coffee. "That's going to be a hard sell to some of the guys," he said. "I know," she said. "Not me," he said. "I mean, I get it. After everything you've laid out, I get it. But some of these guys have been wound up for 3 weeks and they want to do something physical about it." "I know," she said again. He looked at her. "How do you stay so calm?" he said, genuinely. "Because every time I think I'm about to lose my patience with the situation, I look at you and you're just," he gestured at her, "like this, like nothing rattles you." She looked at her coffee for a moment. "Things rattle me," she said. "You don't show it," he said. "No," she said. "I don't." "How?" he said. She thought about it. She gave him a real answer because Derek had earned real answers at this point, and she knew it. "Because I've been in situations where what I felt in the moment was the most dangerous thing in the room," she said. "Not the collapsing building, not the fire, not the people who were in trouble. My own reaction to all of it. Your emotions are information, but they're not instructions. I had to learn to receive the information without letting it become the decision." Derek stared at her. "That's the most useful thing anyone's ever said to me," he said. "It took me 4 years of watching people get hurt to learn it," she said. He nodded slowly. "4 names worth," he said quietly. She looked at the tattoo. "4 names worth," she confirmed. He picked up his coffee. He started to leave. Then he stopped. He was always stopping. She had noticed it, always starting to leave, and then turning back like he started the sentence outside the conversation and needed to come back to finish it. "Megan," he said. She looked at him. "I'm glad Jackson stopped me that first day," he said, "in the garage. I'm glad he said enough when he did. Because I was being," he stopped. "I was being what I sometimes am, what I've always been. Loud because it's easier than whatever the other thing is." He paused. "But I'm glad he stopped me. Because if he hadn't, I might have driven you out of here before I got to see what you actually are. She held his gaze. What am I, she said, not challenging, genuinely asking. I thought about it seriously. The person who knows where the real danger is, he said, while the rest of us are looking at the wrong thing. He left. She stood in Bay 4 for a moment after he was gone. She thought about the first day, the laughter, her wrist in his hand, the whole room finding it funny. She thought about how easy it would have been to leave that afternoon, pack the backpack, get back on the road, add Red Canyon to the list of places that hadn't worked out. She thought about what she would have missed. She went back to the valve adjustment. The 11 o'clock meeting that Jackson called was not for the full chapter. It was for 8 people, the same inner circle from the Canyon Road conversation, plus one addition. Megan. He did not explain the addition. He simply included her, and the room accepted it with the particular ease of people who had been recalibrating their understanding of her for 5 weeks and had mostly finished the process. Jackson laid out what they had. The Canyon Road movement. The plates traced to vehicles registered to a logistics company in Tucson that when you looked at it long enough, it had the organizational fingerprints of a front operation. The cargo not confirmed, not fully, but the patterns consistent with what Cole and Rafe had observed. And the timeline 14 days counting down to a confrontation that the Black Vultures had announced, which meant they were confident enough in their position to give warning. Why announce it at all, Cole said. If they're already moving through the road, why tell us anything? Why the 14-day threat? Because moving through the road once doesn't mean they own it, Megan said. All heads turned to her. They need the chapter out of Red Canyon. Permanently disrupted or relocated or fractured from the inside. The supply run on day 14 is their public justification. They move on it, they take the chapter apart in the confrontation, and then the road is theirs going forward with no organized resistance. They're planning to win on day 14, Jackson said. They're planning to end it on day 14, Megan said. They think they've spent 3 weeks setting it up perfectly. Internal confusion with the facility leak, countdown pressure building, chapter attention focus forward instead of sideways. She paused. But they made a mistake. The room waited. They gave us 11 days, she said. They think those 11 days are going to be spent getting wound up and reactionary. Instead, those 11 days are the window. For what, Derek said. For making sure that when day 14 comes, she said, we're not where they expect us to be. Jackson looked around the room. I want a plan by end of day tomorrow, he said. What we know, what we can confirm, what we're going to do about it, and how we make sure that when this ends, it actually ends. Not a skirmish, an ending. The room began to work. That was when it got complicated in a way Megan had not entirely anticipated. She had been thinking about the Black Vultures as an organization. A group with a strategy and a timeline and a set of tactics. She had been thinking about them tactically the way she thought about every problem as a system to be understood and countered. She had not been thinking about who was running them. That information arrived at 2:15 that afternoon, when one of the members Jackson had assigned to background research on the Black Vultures' leadership came into the office with a name and a photograph printed on a single sheet of paper. Jackson looked at it. His expression did not change. He looked up from the paper. He looked at Megan, and something in the way he looked at her made the air in the room change. What? She said. He set the paper face down on the desk. Tell me something, he said. His voice was very careful. Ridgecrest, 2017, the collapse. You said there were 23 people in the structure when it came down. Yes, she said, slowly, because something in his tone had triggered the navigational instinct that told her the ground was shifting. 19 out, he said. 4 didn't make it. Yes, she said. The structural failure, he said. Was it assessed as accident or negligence? She was very still. The official finding was negligence, she said. Improper structural modifications. The building had been altered without permits. The company that owned it had been cited twice in the previous year for safety violations. And the company, he said. She looked at him. Jackson, she said. What was the company, he said. She knew what he was going to say before he said it. She knew it the way you know when a structure is about to fail. The sound of it before the actual event. The vibration through the floor a half second before the ceiling moves. Say the name, she said. He turned the paper over. The photograph was of a man 53 years old with a shaved head and a scar on his left jawline. The kind of face that had been through enough to wear its history on it. His name was printed under the photograph. Vincent Caro, former owner and operator of Caro Industrial Holdings, Tucson, Arizona, the company that had owned the Ridgecrest warehousing district in 2017. The company whose negligence had put 23 people in a collapsing building. The company whose improper structural modifications had killed 4 members of Megan's rescue team, and the current operational leader of the Black Vultures. The room was completely silent. Jackson watched her face. She was looking at the photograph. She was not showing anything. Every person in that room with enough experience reading people could see the effort it was taking her to not show anything. And that effort itself was information about the depth of what was underneath it. "He's here," she said. Her voice was completely level. "He's in Red Canyon." "We believe so," Jackson said. "The Black Vultures set up a base of operations about 40 miles south. He's been there approximately 2 months." 2 months. She had arrived in Red Canyon 6 weeks ago. She had been 2 months behind him without knowing she was following anything. And this thought arrived cold and precise and demanded to be considered. Had she been following something she didn't consciously admit to following? Had she come to Red Canyon because of the terrain and the mechanic work and the open listing at the garage? Or had some deeper navigation, the broken kind, the kind that works even when the needle is gone, had it been pulling her toward this? She could not answer that. She could not answer it honestly, not right now, not in this room, not with 8 people watching her face. "He served 3 years," she said, "for the Ridgecrest violations. Came out in 20 on." "Yes," Jackson said. "The civil suits were settled out of court," she said. "The family's got money. Not enough, but money." "Yes," Jackson said. She looked at the photograph for another 3 seconds. Then she looked at Jackson. "This doesn't change the plan," she said. Jackson looked at her carefully. "Megan." "The plan is the plan," she said. "The information about who's running the Black Vultures is relevant to understanding their organizational capacity and their motivation for this specific operation. Caro would have strong incentive to establish a solid operation that insulates him from further legal exposure. That's useful tactical information." She paused. "It doesn't change what we do about day 14. "That's very composed of you," Derek said. She looked at him. His voice had not been sarcastic. It was genuine, the particular tone of someone who is watching a person do something difficult and is naming it because it deserves to be named. "It's the right call," she said. "Emotion is information. It's not instructions." Her own words back to herself. Derek held her gaze. He nodded. Jackson watched the exchange. "All right," he said. "The plan stands." "But Megan," he waited until she looked at him. "After this, when it's over, you and I are going to talk about Vincent Caro separately." "Okay," she said. "Because what happened in that building," he said quietly, "and what he was responsible for, that deserves more than a tactical footnote." She looked at him for a long moment. "Yes," she said, "it does." The meeting ended. She walked back through the garage to Bay 4. She stood at the workbench. She looked at the valve adjustment she'd been working on before the 11 o'clock meeting. She picked up the tool. She set it back down. She pressed both hands flat on the workbench and looked at them. Grease on the knuckles. A small scar on the right index finger from a cable that had snapped in the Ridgecrest building as she was coming out the second time. She had never had it properly looked at. It had healed crooked slightly. She had not thought about Vincent Caro in 2 years. She had made a deliberate decision after the civil proceedings, after the settlement, after the official record was closed, to put him in the compartment where she put the things she could not change and could not carry openly without being flattened by them. She had thought she had done that successfully. She had thought she was past the part where his name could walk into a room and take the air out of it. She was wrong. The 4 names on her wrist, the broken compass, the building that came down because a man named Vincent Caro had filed fraudulent safety documentation to save money on structural compliance in a building that people then entered, trusting it was safe. She picked up the tool. She went back to the valve adjustment. She worked for 40 minutes in the particular focused silence of someone using the precision of a physical task to hold together something interior that is trying very hard to come apart. Ronnie came by at 3. He didn't say anything about the meeting. He stood at the edge of Bay 4 for a moment. You okay, he said. Working, she said. I know, he said. That's not what I asked. She looked up. I'm working, she said. Steady. He looked at her for a moment. There's a diner 2 blocks north, he said. Patty makes pie that I'm not exaggerating when I tell you is possibly the best thing in Red Canyon. And I include the canyon itself in that comparison. He paused. You want to go get pie and not talk about any of this for 45 minutes. She looked at him. Something shifted in her expression. Not collapse, not vulnerability. Something smaller and more real, the look of a person who has been holding something heavy for a long time and has just been offered a moment to set it down. Yeah, she said. Okay. The pie was in fact extraordinary. They sat in a booth and ate apple pie with a kind of cinnamon heavy filling that tasted like someone's grandmother made it, because someone's grandmother did make it, and Ronnie talked about entirely other things, about a bike he was building, about his sister's kid who had just started walking, about a road trip he had taken 10 years ago that had gone wrong in 4 different directions and had somehow still been one of the best things he'd ever done. And Megan listened and ate pie and said enough to keep the conversation moving without having to reach very deep for it. And for 45 minutes, she was just a person eating pie in a diner. Not the woman with broken compass, not the person who had pieced together the Black Vulture's strategy, not the only human being on the planet who had just discovered that the man who killed 4 people she was responsible for was living 40 miles south of where she had accidentally decided to stay. Just a person with pie. It helped. She would not have predicted how much it helped. They walked back to the garage, and she went to Bay 4 and finished the valve adjustment in 20 minutes, clean and precise. And when she was done, the engine ran like it was new. That evening, Jackson knocked on her motel room door at 7:30. She opened it. He was standing there with his jacket on and the look of a man who had decided to have a specific conversation and had been working up to it for several hours. Can I come in? He said. Sure, she said. He came in. He sat in the chair by the small table. She sat on the edge of the bed. The room was small and spare, and she had very few things in it, which was the room of someone who was still not entirely certain they were staying. He noticed that. She could tell he noticed. Tell me about Ridgecrest, he said. Not the tactical version you gave the room today. The real one. She looked at him for a moment. It was the worst night of my career, she said, which covered a lot of ground. She paused. The building came down in 3 stages. The first stage was survivable if you move fast. The second stage was when we lost people. She stopped. She started again. I was in the southwest corner with 2 members of my team. We had located a pocket of survivors, 6 people. We were working on extraction. The second stage collapse changed the geometry of everything. The path we came in on was gone. She stopped again. I got my team out, both of them, and 4 of the 6 survivors. The other 2, she stopped. The other 2 were in a section that had fully collapsed in the second stage. There was nothing, there was no way to reach them. I know that. I knew it then. There was no way. Jackson was very still. But, he said, but knowing there was no way is not the same as being at peace with no way, she said. The no way has 4 names, and it has a reason. A man who cut corners on structural compliance to save money on a building he was going to sell in 18 months anyway. 4 people died because of that decision, not because of a natural disaster, because of a business calculation. And he served 3 years, Jackson said. He served 3 years, she said. The room was quiet. What do you want from this, Jackson said. From the situation we're in now, with Caro running the Black Vultures 40 miles south of here. What do you actually want? She looked at her hands. I want it to end the right way, she said. Whatever that means for the chapter. The road secured the Black Vultures out of your territory, your people safe. She paused. I want Caro to face what he's doing now. Not 2017. The statute of limitations doesn't care about what I want regarding 2017. What he's doing now, which if we've documented it correctly is enough. It might be, Jackson said, depending on what we can confirm about the cargo. Then confirm it, she said. That's the ending, not violence, not revenge. The right documentation, the right people, the right end. He looked at her for a long moment. The broken compass, he said. It doesn't mean you're lost. She looked at him. No, she said. It means the needle moved, he said. It means you recalibrated after something broke it. You don't point the old way anymore. You point a different way. He paused. That's not broken, that's adapted. She was very still. That's a generous reading, she said. It's the accurate one, he said. She looked at the tattoo, 4 names. Adapted, not broken. She had never thought about it that way. She did not know what to do with that yet. It was too new, too large to hold all at once. She filed it somewhere careful and quiet to come back to when she had the space for it. Day 14 is in 8 days, she said. Yes, he said. Whatever Caro is planning for that day, she said, it's going to be larger than the Canyon Road movement. He's going to bring people. He's going to try to make a statement. I know, Jackson said. Your chapter needs to be ready, she said. Not reactive, ready. I know that too, he said. Then let's plan it properly, she said. All the way through, beginning to end. He looked at her. Tomorrow morning, he said. 6:30. I'll be there at 6, she said. He stood. He started toward the door. He stopped. Of course he stopped. Megan, he said. She looked at him. Those 4 people, he said. They'd know. What you've done here, what you're doing, they'd know it was for them. She didn't answer. She couldn't answer. She nodded once. He left. She sat in the small, spare room for a long time after the door closed. She sat with the new way of looking at the tattoo, adapted, not broken, a needle that moved instead of a needle that was gone. She sat with Vincent Caro's name in the room with her after 2 years of keeping it in the compartment, and she let herself feel all of it, the anger, the grief, the particular exhaustion of carrying something this long, and she did not manage it or contain it or turn it into anything useful. She just felt it for the first time in a long time. She let herself just feel it. Then she breathed. Then she lay back. 8 days. 8 days to make sure that when it ended, it actually ended. 8 days to make sure 40 people she had somehow, against all her best instincts, begun to think of as hers, got through it whole. 8 days to walk toward the things she had been circling for 3 years without naming it. She closed her eyes. She said the 4 names in the dark. All 4, and then something new. She told them what she was planning to do. Not out of guilt, not out of debt, out of the particular kind of love you have for the people who changed you by what they gave and what they cost, and who deserve to know that the cost wasn't wasted, that what was built from it is worth the price they paid. She told them. Then she slept. In the morning, the work was waiting. It was always waiting, and she was always ready for it. That was the thing about Megan Callahan, that Red Canyon was still learning, and that the Black Vultures had made the catastrophic mistake of not knowing at all. She was not someone you broke. She was someone who had already been to the breaking point and come back and kept coming. And the 8 days ahead of her, with their danger and their weight, and Vincent Caro at the end of them, were not a threat. They were the reason she was here. She had always been on her way to this. She just hadn't known it until now. The 8 days did not move slowly. That was the thing about countdown pressure. People imagined it as a weight that built gradually. One day pressing harder than the last until the final day arrived crushing. But Megan had learned that the reality was the opposite. The days accelerated. The closer you got to the fixed point, the faster time moved around it until the last 48 hours arrived with a velocity that felt almost physical. She was in Jackson's office at 6 in the morning, the day after he had sat in her motel room and told her that the broken compass meant adapted, not lost. She had slept 4 hours. She did not look like someone who had slept 4 hours, which was a skill she had developed over years of being needed in the morning, regardless of what the night had required. Jackson was already there with coffee and a legal pad covered in his handwriting. Sit down, he said. She sat. I've been working through scenarios since 4, he said. What Caro might bring, how many, what their entry points are, what a confrontation on day 14 actually looks like. What did you come up with? She said. Too many variables, he said, which means we need to reduce the variables before day 14 arrives. How? She said. By not being where he expects us to be, she said, and realized she had finished his sentence. He looked at her. Exactly, he said. They worked for 2 hours straight. The legal pad filled up. She had her own thoughts organized in the precise interior architecture she had built over 4 years of emergency response, not notes, not lists, but a structure in her head that she could navigate quickly, pulling what was needed when it was needed without having to search for it. The plan they built was not complicated. The best plans never were. Complexity was the enemy of execution under pressure. The plan needed to be simple enough that 40 people could hold it in their heads in a high-stress situation and execute it without needing to stop and consult each other at the wrong moment. The supply run that the Black Vultures expected to intercept on day 14 would happen. It would happen exactly as scheduled with exactly the vehicles and personnel that a normal supply run would involve. The difference was what they wouldn't be carrying and who would be watching. Jackson would position members in the canyon in 3 clusters, each with specific roles, each with communication but without the kind of visible organization that would read as preparation to anyone watching. The supply run vehicles would be minimally staffed. The rest of the chapter would be in positions that the Black Vultures had no reason to anticipate. The weak point in the plan was the same weak point in every plan that depended on the other side not knowing what you knew. If Caro had additional intelligence, if someone had talked again, if there was a second source inside the chapter that hadn't been identified, the whole architecture came apart. "We need to be honest about that risk," Megan said. "I know," Jackson said. "Which means the people who know the full plan have to be limited," she said. "Inner circle only. Everyone else knows their position and their role and nothing more." "That's going to frustrate people," Jackson said. "Frustrated people who are alive and whose chapter is intact," she said. "Better than informed people who walked into something they couldn't survive." Jackson looked at her. "You've planned operations before," he said, "not just emergency response." She held his gaze for a moment. Before that, she had told him once. He didn't push it. "The plan is good," he said. "Let's bring the inner circle in at noon." She stood up. "Jackson," she said. He looked at her. "If Caro is there on day 14, she said, "in person, if he's running the confrontation himself." "Yes," he said. "I want to be the one who talks to him," she said, "before anything physical happens. I want the chance to look at him and say what needs to be said." Jackson studied her face. "Why?" he said, not challenging, trying to understand. "Because 3 years ago I couldn't," she said. "The legal process happened around me. I gave testimony. I was a witness. I was never in the same room with him in a way that was direct." She paused. "I need to be in the same room with him directly. I need him to know who I am." "And after that," Jackson said carefully, "after that," she said, "we do it right. The documentation, the evidence, the people who need to be called. The ending that actually sticks." She paused. "I'm not asking for revenge. I'm asking for one direct conversation." Jackson was quiet for a long moment. "If it's safe," he said, "if the situation allows it. I'm not putting you in front of Caro if the situation is already violent." "Agreed," she said. "Okay," he said. She went back to Bay 4. The noon meeting with the inner circle was direct and fast. Jackson presented the plan. Megan filled in the tactical reasoning when members asked questions. Derek asked 3 questions, all of them sharp and practical, and she answered all 3 in a way that left no ambiguity. Cole wanted to know what the trigger was. At what point did a watching position become an active position, and they defined it clearly, and everyone in the room locked it in. The meeting was 40 minutes. When it ended, everyone knew exactly what they were doing and why, and nobody knew more than they needed to know. Walking out, Derek fell into step beside Megan. "You and Jackson planned that this morning," he said. "Yes," she said. "Good plan," he said. "Thank you," she said. A pause. "Megan," he said. "Derek," she said. "Is there something about this that's personal for you?" he said. "About the Black Vultures. About Caro specifically." She looked straight ahead. "Yes," she said. I was quiet for a moment. "Okay," he said. "That's all," she said. "I trust Jackson," he said. "And Jackson trusts you. And you haven't given me a single reason to think your personal stake in something changes how you handle it." He paused. "So yeah, that's all." She stopped walking. She turned and looked at him. Derek Hayes, who 6 weeks ago had grabbed her wrist and held it up for a room full of men to laugh at, was looking at her with the plain, uncomplicated expression of someone offering something real. She didn't have words for it. He seemed to understand that. "Go do your thing," he said. He walked away. She stood in the garage for a moment. Then she went to Bay 4. She worked. The days moved fast. 7 remaining became 654. The chapter moved through its regular operations with the surface appearance of a group that was managing normal life, because that surface appearance was itself part of the plan. The black vultures, whatever intelligence they had on the chapter's movements, needed to see routine. They needed to see the countdown working exactly the way they intended, a chapter wound tight, reacting to a fixed point, not watching the peripheral. Megan slept in shorter intervals and woke with the particular alertness of someone whose internal system had recalibrated to emergency proximity. She ate well deliberately because she knew from experience that people underestimated the physical cost of sustained high alert states and paid for it at the worst possible moment with the one resource they couldn't recover quickly. She called no one outside Red Canyon. There was no one to call. That had always been true, and she had always accepted it without much examination. But on the fourth night before day 14, lying in the dark in the Route 9 motel, she looked at that fact directly for the first time in a long time. No one to call, no one outside this town who would want to know that something significant was happening to her. She had arranged her life with extraordinary precision to ensure that remained true. She looked at the tattoo. She thought about what Jackson had said, adapted, not broken. She thought about how adaptation that only went one direction, away from people, away from connection, away from the risk of losing again, was its own kind of staying still. You couldn't run from loss. She knew that. She had known it professionally for years. You could only run from the opportunity for it, and that was not the same as safety. That was just a smaller life. She said the four names in the dark. Then she said something she had never said to them before. She said, "I think I might stay." The four names did not answer. The dead never do. But the room felt different afterward. She closed her eyes and slept 4 solid hours and woke up ready. 3 days. 2 days. The night before day 14, the garage was quieter than it had ever been. Most members had been given their positions. They knew where to be in the morning and what their role was and what the signal was. The surface was normal. Underneath it, 40 people were holding the same weight in their individual ways. Megan was in Bay 4 at 9 in the evening, not because there was engine work that needed doing, but because the garage was where she thought best, and right now she needed to think. Tyler Brooks came in at 9:15. He was walking without the hitch. Now the femur had healed faster than the surgeon predicted, which the surgeon said was unusual, and Tyler said was because he had exceptional genes, which made the surgeon look deeply unimpressed. He came to Bay 4 and sat on the stool near the workbench and looked at her. "Tomorrow," he said. "Tomorrow," she said. "I want to be out there," he said. "I know what Jackson said. I know my position is support, not canyon. I know you're going to tell me that's the right call." He paused. "I just want to say it. I want to be out there." "I know," said. "It's my chapter," he said. "These are my people." "I know," she said. "Then you understand why it's hard," he said. "Tyler," she said. She looked at him directly. "Wanting to be in the hard place is not the same as being the right person for the hard place right now. You're still healing. If you're in the canyon tomorrow and something goes wrong and your leg compromises you, you become something your brothers have to protect instead of something they can count on." She paused. "The best thing you can do for your people tomorrow is be exactly where Jackson put you." He looked at her for a long moment. "That's frustrating," he said. "Yes," she said, "it is." "You're not going to tell me it doesn't feel that way," he said. "Why would I tell you something that isn't true?" she said. He almost laughed. It wasn't quite a laugh. It was the thing adjacent to a laugh that happens when someone is too serious about the moment to fully commit to it. "You're good at this," he said. "At what?" she said. "At saying the thing that's true without making it feel like a lecture," he said. "Most people who give you the right answer make you feel bad for asking. You don't do that." She looked at the engine. "I've been on the wrong side of that," she said. "People telling me the right thing in the wrong way when I needed to hear it. I learned from that." "What were you doing?" he said. "Before here." "Really?" She looked at him. "Emergency response," she said. "Search and rescue, 4 years." "And before that," he said. She looked at him steadily. "Before that was a long time ago," she said. He held her gaze. "Okay," he said. He stood up. "Megan." "Yeah," she said. "And whatever happens tomorrow," he said, "I'm glad you're here. Not just for the plan, not just for what you figured out about the black vultures." He paused. "Just glad you're here. In this garage. In this town." She looked at him. "Go get some sleep," she said. He left. She stayed in the garage alone for another hour. Then she walked back to the motel. She did not say the four names that night. She just breathed. In the morning, she was ready. Day 14 arrived with the particular quality that significant days always have, unremarkable on the surface, just morning light and cool air, and the ordinary business of another day beginning while underneath it, everything was taut and directional and moving toward a fixed point. Jackson was at the garage at 5:30. He and Megan exchanged 6 sentences. Everything that needed to be said had already been said. The plan was in place. The positions were known. "You'll be with me," Jackson said, "in the lead vehicle for the supply run." "Okay," she said. "If Caro shows," he said, "and if the situation allows it, you get your conversation." "Thank you," she said. "Don't thank me," he said. "Just be ready." "Always," she said. The supply run vehicles left the garage at 7. 2 vehicles standard configuration, the kind of movement that the chapter made regularly enough that anyone watching would read it as routine. Megan was in the passenger seat of the lead vehicle. Jackson drove. The canyon road opened ahead of them, wide and climbing, and flanked by the ridges that had held this place together, and apart from the rest of the state for as long as anyone had been paying attention. Nothing happened for the first 20 minutes. That was the first test of the plan. The first 20 minutes were where people broke, where the taut waiting became unmanageable, and someone moved too soon or communicated when they shouldn't have, or let the silence convince them the whole thing was wrong. Nobody broke. The channel stayed clean. At 22 minutes, Cole's voice came through, very quiet. "Movement, south entrance, 4 vehicles." Jackson said nothing. He drove at exactly the same speed. Megan looked straight ahead. "How many?" Jackson said into the channel. "Counting," Cole said. A pause. 12, maybe 14. Megan did the math. 40 chapter members in position against 14 black vultures, but the chapter was distributed and the black vultures were consolidated. It was not the overwhelming advantage the number suggested. "Caro," Jackson said. A pause. "Negative," Cole said. "Can't confirm." Wait, another pause. "Third vehicle, passenger side." Jackson looked at Megan. She looked at the road ahead. "He's here," she said, not a question. "He's here," Cole confirmed. Jackson said, "Hold positions. Nobody moves until I give the word." The channel clicked twice. Acknowledgement from every position. The 4 black vultures vehicles came in from the south entrance and spread across the canyon road, blocking it. Exactly what the plan had anticipated. They had done this before, or something like it. The positioning was practiced, the vehicles angling to create a wall that forced the supply run to stop. Jackson stopped the vehicle. He and Megan sat in the cab. Outside, across the blocked road, the black vultures organized themselves into the particular configuration of people who believe they have the advantage and are taking a moment to enjoy it. 12 men out of the vehicles, 2 staying in, the one staying in the third vehicle on the passenger side. "I'm getting out," Megan said. "Megan, if I get out alone," she said. It reads as non-threatening. It reads as the situation being different from what they expected. It creates a pause. She looked at Jackson. A pause is what we need right now. Caro needs to see something that doesn't fit his script before he starts executing his script. Jackson looked at her for a long moment. "If it goes wrong," he started. "Then it goes wrong," she said. "Give me 60 seconds. He said nothing. She took that as the answer it was. She got out of the vehicle. She stood in the canyon road. 12 Black Vultures members looked at her. The shift in the dynamic was immediate and visible. The arrival of a single woman. No weapon visible, no aggression, standing in the middle of their roadblock with the absolute physical stillness of someone who has stood in worse places than this and was not performing calm but actually embodying it. Nobody moved for 4 seconds. That was the first mini-climax. 4 seconds of nobody knowing what to do with what they were looking at. Then the third vehicle door opened. Vincent Caro got out. He was exactly the photograph, 53 years old, shaved head, the scar on the left jawline, the face that had been through enough. He walked forward slowly, the way men walk when they are accustomed to other people making room for them. He stopped 15 feet from her. He looked at her. His expression was the expression of a man running a fast calculation. Who is this? Why is she here? What does this mean? Is this a threat? And the calculation was visible because people who are not accustomed to being surprised are always visible when they are surprised. Where's Reed? He said. He's here, she said. I wanted to talk to you first. Carol looked at her. I don't know you, he said. No, she said. You don't. Then what do you want? He said. My name is Megan Callahan, she said. She said it clearly, not loudly. She said it the way you say a name that carries weight without theatrical emphasis, because theatrical emphasis diminishes weight. Just the name given plainly. Carol's face moved, something in it, fast and then controlled. I don't know that name, he said, but he said it slightly too quickly. Ridgecrest, she said, 2017, southwest corner, third building. The canyon was very quiet. Carol was very still. I was one of the responders, she said. I went in twice. I came out with 19 people. She looked at him. 4 didn't come out. Carol's jaw tightened. That was investigated, he said. It was settled. The legal matter was, I know what it was, she said. I know what you served. I know what the families received. She held his gaze without blinking. I'm not here to relitigate 2017. The law did what the law did. She paused. I'm here to tell you that I carry 4 names on my wrist because of a decision you made about structural compliance in a building people trusted was safe. And I've been carrying those names for 3 years. And I wanted to look at you and say that directly. The 12 Black Vultures members were completely still. Carol's face had gone through 3 distinct changes in the last 20 seconds and had arrived at something that was neither the authority he came in with nor the aggression he had planned for. What do you want? He said. His voice was different now, quieter. I already told you, she said, to look at you and say it directly. She paused. And to tell you that whatever you plan to do here today is over, not because of me, because of everything else. She stepped slightly to the side. Because behind her, visible now on the canyon road in both directions, the chapter was moving into position. Not rushing, not aggressive, moving with the deliberate, purposeful pace of people who know exactly where they're going and have been waiting to go there. 40 people, emerging from positions the Black Vultures had not seen, had not anticipated because they had been placed based on intelligence that the Black Vultures did not know the chapter had. The 12 men outside the vehicles turned. They turned again. The math of the situation arrived at them the way math always arrived first, as discomfort, then as clarity, then as the specific stillness of people who have just understood that the plan they came in with no longer applies. Carol looked at the positions. He looked at the numbers. He looked at the faces. He looked at Jackson Reed, who had gotten out of the lead vehicle and was walking forward calmly and whose face carried the particular weight of 14 years of building something worth protecting. Carol looked back at Megan. You set this up, he said. We set this up, she said, together. He looked at her with an expression she had not expected and could not entirely name. It was not admiration. It was not respect in any comfortable sense. It was the expression of someone recognizing against their will that they have been outthought, that the person in front of them saw further ahead than they did and ran a better operation with less. The documentation from the canyon road, she said, 3 nights ago, 2 vehicles, the cargo, she watched his face. That's already with people who know what to do with it. This confrontation today, you walking away from it or not walking away from it, that doesn't change what they have. Kara was absolutely still. You've been building a case, he said. We've been building a record, she said, of what you've been doing, how you've been operating, what you've been moving through this road. She paused. 3 years served didn't change what you are. It just changed your location. A very long silence. Jackson stopped beside Megan. He looked at Kara without speaking. Kara looked at Jackson, at Megan, at the 40 people in position around him. He looked at his 12 men. He made a calculation. It was a fast one because it was a simple one. The only calculation that is simple is the one where all the variables point the same direction. Call your people back, Caro said. To his own men, we're done here. One of the Black Vultures members started to say something. We're done here, Caro said again harder. Final. The 12 men pulled back toward the vehicles. Caro looked at Megan one more time. She looked back at him. There was nothing performative in her face. No triumph, no satisfaction of the hot immediate kind. What was in her face was something colder and more durable. The look of someone who has waited a long time for a moment that has finally arrived and is receiving it exactly as it is without adding to it or diminishing it. The 4 names, Caro said, very quietly, so only she could hear. I know I can't. He stopped. His jaw moved. There isn't a thing I can say. No, she said. There isn't. He held her gaze for one more second. Then he got back in the vehicle. The four Black Vultures' vehicles reversed. They turned at the south entrance and drove out of the canyon and kept going. The canyon road was open. The chapter held its positions for 3 full minutes after the last vehicle was out of sight. Professional. Disciplined. Nobody broke the line until Jackson gave the word through the channel. Then the word came, and the canyon exhaled. And so did she. Jackson stood beside her on the road. He didn't say anything for a moment. She was looking at the point where Carol's vehicle had disappeared. She was thinking about 4 names. She was thinking about the 3rd building, the southwest corner, the 2nd stage collapse that changed the geometry of everything. She was thinking about 2 people in a section that had fully come down, and all the space between the moment she understood they were unreachable and the moment she had to turn and bring out the ones she could still carry. She was thinking about 3 years of that moment living in her wrist. Did it help? Jackson said. The conversation. She thought about it honestly. Yes, she said. It wasn't what I imagined it would be. For 3 years I thought, she paused. I thought I wanted him to understand what he'd done. I thought I wanted to see that understanding in his face. She paused again. What I actually wanted was simpler than that. I just needed to say it out loud to him, directly, to put the thing that happened in the space between us instead of just carrying it inside me. And now, he said, she looked at the tattoo. Now the compass still points the same direction, she said. It always will. The 4 names are still there. She paused. But the weight is different. Different how, he said. Lighter, she said, by exactly enough. He nodded. They stood on the canyon road. Around them, 40 members of the Red Canyon chapter were coming out of their positions. The disciplined formation, dissolving into the ordinary human noise of people who have just gotten through something difficult and are releasing the tension of it. Voices, a laugh somewhere. The sound of Ronnie saying something to Cole in the tone of absolute relief, badly disguised as casual. Derek came up on Megan's other side. He looked at the road where the Black Vultures had been. They're gone, he said. Yes, she said. And Caro, he said. He has bigger problems than this chapter now, she said. What Cole and Rafe documented 3 nights ago, when the right people have that his operation in this state is finished. Derek was quiet. You planned all of it, he said. We planned all of it, she said. Jackson, the inner circle, all of you in your positions this morning. But you saw it first, he said. She looked at him. Someone has to see it first, she said. That's just how it works. He was quiet for a moment. You're not leaving, are you? He said. Not a question. The tone of someone who has already arrived at the answer and is confirming it. She looked at the road. She looked at the chapter around her. She looked at the garage, which was visible at the canyon entrance, its familiar shape against the November sky. She thought about what she had said to the 4 names 2 nights ago. I think I might stay. No, she said. I'm not leaving. Derek exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding that breath for a while. Gooded, he said. Simple. Complete. Tyler Brooks materialized on her left, limping slightly with the last remaining traces of the femur, and stood there with an expression that was trying to contain more than it could hold. How was the support position, she said. Terrible, he said. I hated every second of it. Good call, she said. Yeah, he said. I know. He paused. Is it over? Actually over? This part, she said. Yes. What's the next part? He said. She looked at the garage. Work, she said. There's a fuel injection system in Bay 2 that I've been meaning to finish. He looked at her. He started to laugh. It was a real laugh this time. Full and surprised and completely uncontrolled, the laugh of a 24-year-old who has been wound tight for weeks and has just found the release point. The laugh spread. Ronnie caught it. Cole caught it. 2 more members caught it. The canyon filled with the sound of 40 people coming down from something that had required everything they had, finding the particular irreplaceable relief of the thing that is finally done. Megan did not laugh, but she smiled. A real one, the kind she had not produced in a very long time, that came from somewhere below the controlled surface, from the place she usually kept locked against the risk of things that could hurt if they left. Jackson saw it. He said nothing. He just looked at her the way a person looks at something they have been watching become itself over the course of many days, and many conversations, and many small irreversible choices, and have now seen arrive at what it was always moving toward. Later that afternoon, she was in Bay 4. The fuel injection system in Bay 2 was done by 2 o'clock. She moved to a stripped-down touring bike that had been waiting a week. She worked through it with the focused, steady rhythm. That was the most honest thing about her, the way she was most herself, most fully present, most completely in the world without reservation. Ronnie came by at 3. "Patty's making pie again tonight," he said. "Okay," she said. "That means yes," he said. "That means okay," she said. He grinned. He walked away. Derek came by at 4:30. He didn't say anything. He just set a cup of bad coffee at the edge of the workbench and walked back to his bay. She looked at the coffee. She looked at his back. She picked up the coffee and took a drink. At 5, Jackson appeared at the entrance to Bay 4. "How's the bike?" he said. "Almost done," she said. He nodded. He started to leave. "Jackson," she said. He looked at her. "Thank you," she said, "for stopping Derek that first day, for recognizing the tattoo, for all of it." He looked at her steadily. "You didn't need any of it," he said. "You would have found your way here." "Maybe," she said, "but it would have taken longer, and I might have left before I got here." He was quiet for a moment. "Megan," he said, "the reason I recognized the tattoo." He paused. "It wasn't just because I was there in 2017. It was because I've had my own compass. Not on my wrist, but somewhere." He touched his chest briefly without drama. "I've known what it means to lose the needle and keep moving anyway. And I've known what it looks like on a person who's been doing that for a long time." He looked at her. "I saw it the second you walked in the door." She held his gaze, and she said, "And I thought," he said, "that person needs to stop walking for a minute and see what's in front of them." The garage hummed around them. She looked at the bay, her toolbox exactly organized, the bike she had nearly finished, the wall with tools arranged in the sequence she had built out of weeks of working in this space. She thought about 9 weeks ago walking into this garage with a backpack and a toolbox and a silence around her that made people uncomfortable. She thought about Derek's laugh and the room full of men and her wrist in his hand and the broken compass held up for everyone to see. She thought about Jackson's voice from the corner. One word, enough. She thought about Tyler on the Canyon Road and Ronnie and pie and bad coffee and the sound this building made when it was full of people doing work they understood. She thought about 4 names and 8 years of carrying them and one direct conversation on a canyon road on a day in November. That shifted the weight without removing it, that changed the direction without erasing the distance already traveled. She thought about the broken compass on her wrist and the needle that was not gone, but moved that pointed not nowhere but somewhere new. Somewhere it had taken all of this to find. She looked at Jackson. "I'm staying," she said. "Not one more day. Not until something changed. Not with the backpack already mentally half-packed. Staying, full stop." Jackson Reed, the man who had built this chapter over 14 years, and had stopped a room from laughing at a woman whose tattoo he recognized before anyone else understood what they were looking at, allowed himself the quietest possible version of a smile. "Good," he said. He walked back to his office. She turned back to the bike. She finished it at 6:15. The engine ran clean and true, the way engines run when someone who knows what they're doing has worked on them with attention and time. And she stood beside it for a moment and listened to the sound of it, the particular honest sound of something that had been broken and was now whole. She picked up her tools. She put them back in their places. She washed her hands at the utility sink. She hung her jacket on the hook in Bay 4. Not her backpack, not on the hook she used for her backpack, which was the hook of a person who might need to grab it and go. Her jacket, the hook where people hang things they're coming back for tomorrow. She walked through the garage toward the door. Around her, the chapter moved through the last hour of the day. Engines and voices and the particular layered noise of that building, full of those people which she had learned in 9 weeks, the way you learn a language when you're immersed in it from the inside out until it stops being foreign and starts being thought. She pushed through the door. The November air hit her face cold and dry and carrying the smell of the canyon dust and elevation and something ancient that had no name. She stood outside for a moment. She looked up. She did not think about the next place. She did not think about Phoenix. She did not measure exits. She looked at the tattoo on her wrist, the broken compass, 4 names. The needle was gone and it would always be gone, and the four names would always be there, and the weight would always be exactly what it was, lighter by enough, heavier than nothing. The specific mass of people who changed you by what they gave and what they cost. But the compass was not broken. It had never been broken. It had been pointing here all along, to this garage, this chapter, this town, these people who had laughed at her and then stopped laughing, and then piece by piece, in the way that real things are always built quietly with friction, through all the wrong first impressions and the slow corrections, had become the first people in 3 years that she would not leave behind. Megan Callahan, 29 years old, with her golden hair and her calm blue eyes and the tattoo that had told the truth about her from the beginning, stood outside the Red Canyon Hells Angels garage in the cold November air and breathed. She was not the woman with the strange tattoo. She was not the woman everyone had laughed at. She was not the woman who kept running. She was the woman who had finally stopped. And the compass, broken, adapted, repointed by everything she had survived and everyone she had carried, and all the loss that had remade her into exactly who she needed to be, the compass had brought her here. And here was where she stayed.